We might break a few very small things, but overall things should be staying the same this update.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you're enjoying the presets. Sorry.
Sound like... sorry.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard with the delay.
please.
Let me make sure that we go onto a region that's in the middle for everyone. I think that should make it better. US West usually works better. So please, who was speaking? sirgog, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think in the past you've had one sound for Awakened Sextants and then one sound for Exalted Orbs in the past. And I assume obviously Divines will go to what Exalts used to sound like. But I'm curious which of those sounds you're going to put Exalted Orbs to on day one.
So my strategy there is, first, I'll put both Exalted Orbs and Divine Orbs into Tier 1.
Yeah.
And they'll be staying there until the economy will reach some equilibrium. And now both orbs are allowed to move below the Exalted Orb tier, but not below the Divine Orb tier, just to prevent some sort of automation errors or price fixing or whatever. So there'll be all of these top tier orbs except the mirrors. This also includes all kind of other orbs, awakened orbs and so forth. So will be now stuck between those tiers and can move up and down those tiers. And when it comes to actually calculating the prices for items, because items have always a flat and a percentual threshold. For instance, like a tier 1 is something like 30 chaos plus 10% or 50% of Exalted Orb. It will now use the higher of the two orbs. So if Divine Orb is higher, it will be using that threshold. If the Exalted Orb is higher, it will be using that threshold. So it is pretty independent of whatever's going on with that.
Yep.
All right,
starting with both as gold tier makes sense. I think that Exalts will be 50C day one because they're so useful on bench crafts. Then they'll fall, but not as far as people think.
8 Chaos Exalts. Let's go.
Didn't they remove all of the Exalts bench crafts, or did they leave some?
No, they left.
Only the meta mods.
Percent fizz and shit like that.
100 to 129% fizz percent local fizz is still.
So they only move the meta crafts.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
I missed that.
They list the 5 that are being changed into Divine Orbs. 4 of them from Exalts, one of them from Blessed Orbs. All the rest of them that were Exalts stay Exalts. All the ones that are currently Divines are changing either to Chaos or to Exalts, and we don't know. So things
Very
like 20 to 25% fizz conversion to cold. That's currently one Divine. That may become one Exalt. That may become 12 Chaos. We don't know.
Yeah, but there's plenty of decent crafts for Exalts still. Like most notably, I think the tier 1, like you said, increased fizz and spell damage with fizz non-chaos is extra chaos, but also the hits can't be evaded for 3 Exalts.
Yep.
And there's a number.
Tier 1 local attack speed?
Yeah, tier 1 attack speed. So on. Oh, by the way, I'm keeping this in. This is super relevant to our listeners. So the podcast already started. Welcome everyone to Fated Connections, episode number 82. Today we talk about the latest drip of news for 3.19 Lake of Kalandra, which is starting in less than 23 hours. And to discuss all the stuff that we've been told, here with me is not only BalorMage, but also NeverSink and sirgog. Welcome to you both. We haven't had you on in a long time, NeverSink. Would you like to quickly say some words about yourself? For people who don't know NeverSink, this is basically the inventor of the NeverSink filter, as well as the creator of the same website, Filterblade, that allows you to customize that filter.
Thanks, Catmaster. So first of all, thank you for the invitation. And well, as you've already introduced me, I'm NeverSink. I'm 32 from Germany. I'm playing PoE since basically the beta times, and at the same time, I do some development for some IT projects such as Filterblade and MyFilter and some other things. So I guess that PoE is kind of this two-parted game for me, where there's the meta IT game where I'm trying to solve the puzzle of what the hell is going GG to do with the economy this time and the meta changes and keep users happy, and at the same time trying to figure out how to make my build work, usually like 1 hour before the league starts, because there's a ton of things to do. So yeah, thanks. Really excited. There's a lot of exciting changes there, and I was really hungry for a good new league with some new spells. So yeah, really excited to be here.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. I'm looking forward to getting into all of it. Quickly give sirgog a short moment. Welcome. How are you doing? How's it going? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I'm all right. I always love this period of the league where it's like just the crazy hype season, and there's like you're excited to look at a whole bunch of things that haven't yet been proven not to be very effective. So there's a whole lot of possibilities still up in the air. So it's always my favorite part of the league is usually the up to about 3 or 4 days in. From 2 weeks before it starts to about 3 or 4 days in.
Well, let's hope that this time's a little bit longer with a little bit more mysteries to unravel as we explore the lake. And also, hi, Balor. How have you been? How's the pre-league hype going? Holding up?
Oh, man. I am very hyped about this league, but I don't really get pre-league hype anymore. I get pre-league stress. Because there's just a lot of work to do in the week leading. It's relaxing time 23 hours from now, right? Like when the league starts is when I stop working and start having fun.
Exactly.
Like it's stress time this week. Look, I put out for me a ton of videos. Like
yeah, absolutely.
Like compared to my normal thing, and like I don't have a team or anything. Like it's compared to how many I normally do, we've put a ton of YouTube videos in the last week, and that's been just.
I'm actually looking forward to watching the Atlas Passive Tree one myself because I have no idea what Atlas Passive Tree strat I'm going with. I mean, I have a rough idea where everything is on there and what's going to be useful, but.
Yep. So yeah, like I am excited. I think the league is actually going to be great. Luckily, right? Okay. So what I do have is an editor who does all my editing, which is we'd have half the amount of videos without him. That's great, but it's still stress time. But the thing I'm the most excited about is the economy, by the way. Like, absolutely having no idea what the hell's going to happen or what any unique is going to be worth. Like,
yeah. I mean, we mentioned the Divine and Exalted changes in the beginning, right before the intro, but also, like, the unique stuff makes it completely unpredictable. I mean, we have no idea. I talked about this with some people before we started this podcast segment. People were telling me Obliteration League Start, and I was like, I'm not so sure I would count on Obliteration on League Start. I mean, they significantly buffed it, and I'm worried that Obliteration might actually be like as rare as like the tier below Void Battery or even on the same tier. Who knows? I mean, it was incredibly powerful for so long, and now they gave it additional power, and I mean, there's diff cards to reliably farm it. I think that thing is going to be much rarer than people expect.
Yeah, I think with uniques that have single outcome divination cards like Obliteration or Chevron's Wrappings, I think they're a bit more reliable. But that said, I do think it is plausible that Obliteration could be the same tier as Chevron's Wrappings is if with the buffs. And so in that situation, yeah, that's going to not be trivial to farm at all. We'll have to find that out. And yeah, there's the stuff someone in your chat saying about Heist. Like, we don't know for certain that the Endless Heist strategy hasn't been changed. It's not been changed.
I didn't mention anything.
But there's a lot of things that GGD will occasionally change drops when there's a particular strategy that feels OP. That does occasionally get changed.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, in order to farm up stuff from Heist, you don't need to use the Endless Heist strat. You can like just buy the 67 ones from Wakano, or even lower if you start heisting earlier. And you'll still be able to get like a decent amount of uniques, currency, and all that stuff.
Yeah, and Heist is on the map device as well. So you can turn 6 Chaos into 2 contracts, 0.32 blueprints on average, and a bunch of coins.
I didn't know the exact numbers on that, but that's great.
That assumes you allocate the stuff on the tree. For the double your chance of blueprints
Yeah. I've never taken heist stuff before. I usually don't block it for the first week because they're too expensive, and then I just block it.
Mm.
But you can actually make a pretty good amount of money. And with all the juice they took out of maps, I think heist is going to be more expensive, like more valuable to sell than before. So I probably end up leaving that on.
Did they end up like saying that there was a bug or that they fixed one there? Because I remember like the first time, I don't know whether it was last league, but like either last league or the league before that, I went into the Atlas passive tree and I directly went for heist. And I swear I didn't get a single blueprint until I spec'd out of heist, and then they started dropping. I mean, it could be just coincidental, but I felt like the chance to drop blueprints fully revealed or something like that somehow messed with my blueprints drops.
But, I've had fully revealed print drops from it. It definitely works. It is rare.
It is rare. You don't get so many blueprints, and the chance of it to be identified, well, to be fully reviewed is 10%. So if you're unlucky, you might go on an unlucky streak like 20 in a row, and that means you won't see a single one that is fully reviewed in days or even weeks, depending how much you run it.
Oh yeah, but I didn't just get no fully revealed ones. I didn't get a single one. That's what I was saying. Like over
that seems strange.
20 or
did
30
some calculations on it, and it seems blueprints are about 170 times as rare as maps. So for every 500 map drops you get, you should get about 3 blueprints. That doubles with your Atlas effects. So with your Atlas nodes to 6. So you're still getting still getting 99% less blueprints than you are maps.
Where we get that number from?
This is Poor Fish Wife. The amount of testing she does is absolutely crazy. Like, there's a large sample size.
So there's a question that comes up with that, because I can guarantee you 1 or 2 blueprints a map in my maps. But I do not get 150 map drops per map. Not even close. Maybe 40?
Your lower tier maps would be being converted into map equity, and then you get this is on a Atlas that can drop maps of all tiers, so 0 voidstones.
Yeah.
So your tier 12 maps are being converted into 1/81st of a tier 16. So a 1 in 81 chance to get a 16.
So if I'm getting 40 to 50 maps, if I changed my Atlas to enable every single map tier drop, you think I'd actually see in that level of juice about 150, 200 maps to account for me getting at least 1 blueprint and sometimes 2 every single map? That would actually make sense. There would be a lot of maps I'd have to hide because we wouldn't want them, but that would make sense.
Just try it, 1 map, and just see what happens.
Oh, we'll see. Have you guys seen... I'm just looking at them again, so I'm getting a little bit distracted here on the side because I'm preparing the graphics to pull up on the screen. Have you guys seen these? These Grand Spectrum reveals that we've been getting? 5% increased max life per Grand Spectrum? That sounds tasty.
So good.
These are very exciting. I think they're also great because they target a very interesting spectrum. So at the very end of the player power curve, I don't think you'll be using these. 3 joules is way too expensive. You get better stuff out there, like the Uber joules you can get, triple stat Watcher's Eyes, amazing timeless joules, and all the kind of cluster stuff is better than the Grand Spectrums. But at the middle range, if they didn't make them like T1 rare, they are very exciting. So you actually have to pay a solid price, but you get a lot of power, and it's a nice way to boost certain abilities of your build until you get these extremely powerful items. So I think it's a very good, strong buff to pretty much any mid-range, mid-experience player. Like, if you can invest frenzy charges, it's up to 15-18% more damage to the attack speed and the flat more percent damage. If you want to get some more survival, endurance charge is amazing. So it's really, really nice to pretty much just mix and match, and I absolutely love these. I think this is great. I'm personally looking very forward to the endurance charge one. It's going to be super useless, so please sell it for 1 chaos to me.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I find myself in agreement with that evaluation because, like, if you just look at it by itself, like, even if you're using 15% increased max life per grand spectrum, 15% increased max life is a lot on 1 joule if you think about it. But if it's the only stat, then it's basically just 3 times 5% life. And then if you compare that to a rare Crimson Jewel, which can have 7% life, almost half of 15, and then 3 other lines on top and a corrupt or like a harvest implicit or something.
It's 7.5 life per point. That's what I'm counting it as.
That's assuming you've got 2-point jewels available, because you'd always take the 2-point jewels.
Those are the only ones I ever take unless I'm desperate for something. But I think most people who use jewels that are like 5 to 50C, these are going to end up being better than in one form or another. Whether it's the life-specific one or the others, like it'll probably actually be a mix of them. Like I would look at different builds that I put out, like the explosive arrow raider that I think will be really good. And I was looking at that and I was like, it generates frenzy charges already automatically. It's a raider. It's 30% off ailment avoidance that you needed to get on gear. And generating power charges and endurance charges is really hard or impossible. Yeah. And I'm like, I would just get 1 power charge, one endurance charge, and 1 ailment avoidant one. And then I've got 32% ailment avoidance, capping me. Permanent endurance charges, permanent power charges. Raider generates frenzies on his own. That's fantastic early league.
Yes. Yeah, and then you replace the elevated influence gear later.
Yeah, like as long as those aren't set to tier 1 rarity, because if you get to the point where you're spending 20x for a jewel and you're getting like a perfect 4-stat jewel, you're blowing it out of the water. Even at the time when you're spending 2 or 3x for a jewel and you've got like 3 perfect stats and like 1 bullshit roll that's still somehow relevant but not one of the things you were after, and they're only 5x, that's still going to beat them. So it's really like an early to mid-level thing.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, if they're very rare, they'll become cheaper because of that. Because you need multiples of them. You can't really buy or sell just one and be happy with that. So they need to be sold in sets, which will make them quite useless. So their demand will actually go down because only certain people will be affording those, and most of them will simply not sell. So even if they're like T2 or T3 rare, I don't think they'll be way too expensive. By far, not many builds can afford putting in 3 effective jewel sockets and will want to go with the grand spectrums, but I think a bunch of them will. So it's a nice compromise. I'm very looking forward to see how they behave, and I think it's GG said they wanted to raise the power of the players by around 5 to 10% per league. I think this is one of the biggest power boosters they're giving us this time, so it's quite a nice one.
I think one of the other things with these is that you'll be able to get them corrupted, and that's something that it's actually easier to get premium corruptions on a unique like these than it is to get them on extremely expensive things.
In chat just now and on Twitter, we just got a new post of a new spoiler.
Okay. We can do a live reaction.
To jump into that
reaction stream
right there. There's that new ring base.
That's literally a ring that we can jump into.
Wow.
Right. Okay, so Penumbra ring base. A left ring slot has reduced effect of curses on you. Right ring slot increased effect of curses on you.
Wow.
Ooh. Okay.
Oh my god.
Okay, so this is a mirror one. This is actually one of the... You can get these new bases only as rewards from the lake, right? And when you're offered a reward from the lake, you get offered 2 mirrored counterparts. And this one we can see adds flat physical to attacks against you, not to physical attacks that you deal. And it has the negative region, lose 29 life per second. And it also has phys attack damage leached by enemy as life. That's interesting.
But the only thing that matters there to me is 30% increased effective curse on you.
This is on you.
That's huge.
Yeah, sadly, you can't wear 2 of them to get 60. Well, please go for it. What do you want to say, NeverSink? I didn't.
No, I mean, if you get a good rolls on these could be quite exciting, quite amazing. I mean, I think in general So I think this boss is very interesting because I've been already asking myself, how will some mods mirror themselves? So it's interesting to see how it's implemented them, and it's going to be very exciting to see how some, let's say, June mods, some veiled mods are going to mirror the cell. So this is going to be quite interesting as well. And just thinking about that, some shenanigans with things like increased effect of chill on you will be very exciting for self-chill builds. So I'm really happy to see the self-quest ring as well. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with stem chains.
Yeah, this outright bricks your character if you equip it as is with with Chaos Inoculation too.
Lose 29. Oh my god.
Yep. Oh god. Yep.
Right. Yeah, this is like your character is broken, and this is something GGG cannot let go live without a fix that says something like, this item cannot be worn on a character with Chaos Inoculation.
Why not? I mean, why couldn't they let it go live like that?
Kill the character. The instant you raise in town, you're dead again.
I don't think so, because life regen doesn't actually apply in town. So I assume lose life won't apply in town. You would just not be able to res in your hideout.
Yeah, exactly. If you res in your hideout, you're insta-dead.
It's only an assumption.
I don't think you can die in town. I don't think you can die in town. But yeah, I find it super interesting, just what you said, NeverSink, right now, to see how these mods are brought to the negative, because I would have assumed that you'd have negative physical damage, like just removes physical damage from attacks that you deal, and have negative leech, so you take a percentage of the damage that you deal over a couple of seconds, but that applies actually to your enemies rather than to your character. It's also an interesting axis to mirror it on.
Yeah, because I'd been thinking of one of the mods that would be quite safe to mirror was things like you have a minimum of 1 endurance charge, but maybe that's not safe to put into the Crangulator.
I mean, what would be the negative of +1 endurance charge? -1 minimum endurance charge, right?
Yeah.
But presumably you have an absolute minimum of 0, unless they don't have an absolute minimum of 0.
I hope they have 0.
Or just going negative makes it negative max. That's what I would have done if I was...
Well, then you have a negative endurance charge.
Yeah, now you can only get 2 endurance charges. If you take a nut on the tree, you're back to 3. But that's the point.
That's what you mean. I thought you meant you actually lowered your minimum endurance charges to -1, so you could actually go below 0 endurance charges, and because that would make no sense. It's an interesting thought experiment. But just like electrons fly around protons and neutrons to make up regular atoms, how antimatter has positrons, like positively charged electron-like particles, and a positronic endurance charge, what would it do? It'd have the negative effect. Okay, I'm going off on a limb here. Super interesting to see the curse effect interaction, and also not too overpowered, because you can only use it on one side, right? You can't use 2 of those rings because they don't just cancel each other out.
Which is good, because my first thought was like 60%, and then I was like, wait, no, I can only use one of them. 30%, still good.
Yeah. I do wonder whether you can 5 for 1 those rings and get a craftable one, the base.
Here's the real question. If I wear it on my right ring socket, so that I have, or left ring socket rather, so I have reduced effective curses,
and then
I mirror it on the Kalandra ring, does it become a right socket one?
No, it has the exact same stats that it has, but then it's on your other socket. Yeah, I mean, I think we mean the same thing.
Yeah, so if you mirror it, it would cancel itself out, not give you the one it's got twice?
Well, because it still counts as wearing it on the other slot, and it just has the exact same stats line for line.
So the only reason I asked that is because that's the exact kind of thing that sometimes gets overlooked and is super busted early.
Yeah, but that was talked about in the Q&A with Chris, Ziggy brought up the example of the unique ring, the Sharon's ring. What is it called? Revelation, yeah. The one that has ES region and mana region, depending on which ring slot you wear.
I remember that. He said it, the way it mechanically works or something is that it essentially just is acting like you're wearing the ring in that other slot as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Something was asked in the chat. Can you 5-to-1 sell these to get the base?
Yeah, sirgog brought that up, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't, other than like an artificially imposed restriction. Like you could do that with the socketed quiver base, for example, from Maloney's mechanism.
Historically, you could do it.
Okay, so if it works with mirror, that's going to be very exciting. So you can recraft it in an influence state. That's quite awesome.
I've never tried
to put quality on that.
So like,
would any quality make it stronger?
Caster usually has the tag for curses, but only if it's tagged.
Yeah, we'd have to press the highlight key on it to find out whether the implicit has a caster tag.
Twitter, please.
Yeah, I don't think
if it works, that becomes what, 36%?
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's no way to influence it. Oh well, I mean, you could influence it, but it wouldn't add any more of that stat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you used to be able to 5-for-1 the like after you'd vendor 5 corrupted Maloney's mechanisms to get back an uncorrupted ornate quiver. Then with the way that fractured fossils used to work, you could just print them by doing the 5-for-1.
Yeah. Well, but you say that's how it used to work? You can't do it anymore? Just the fractured part? Or you can't do the 5-for-1 anymore?
Fractured fossils were changed. They no longer create mirrored items. They now create split ones, and they split the original.
Right. And you can't split an already split item.
Historically.
All right.
But you can still make the quiver base.
Well, these days you'd be making it via corrupting them.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
Unless someone in standard wants to waste 5 mirrors testing it by mirroring a bunch of ornate quivers.
Sounds good.
We'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, and I don't think that the leak mechanic actually changes implicits, right? So if you were to craft on a base that you made on this and you bring it back in, you'd be guaranteed to get 2 rings to pick from that have that exact implicit.
Yep.
So fingers crossed that you can actually get these bases. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine why they would patch out something like. Please, sorry.
I was just saying, I can't imagine these bases being all that rare. Like, I think you'll be able to get you'll get these rings quite a bit from the league mechanic. They'll just mostly be garbage.
Yeah, I think so too. If the 5-to-1 vendor recipe works, at least getting bases to craft normal rings will be quite easy. Getting a good one with doubled stats that you care about, quite hard.
Oh, it's actually not that hard. I listened to Bayclast and Captain Lance said, assuming that it's a 50-50, right? Because we've seen most of the outcomes as having like 3 doubled stats and 3 negative stats. And you get 2 variants. So like the number 1 stat that you care about is guaranteed to be doubled on one of the 2 items, right? So you're guaranteed to have that, and then the second stat that you want would be a 50-50, whether it's on the item that you have your first stat on, and the last one would be another 50-50. So it's a 1 in 4 chance, like bringing an item in.
Correct.
That's not correct.
Yeah, I have a maths background, and you're treating them as independent outcomes there. So you're saying that each one is an independent coin flip, but what happens is that once you lock in that your first one is one of your 3 wins, that decreases your probability of winning on the other mods.
But there's no chance of failure.
There's no chance to fail for the first one because it's on one of the 2 items, right?
Because
we don't know exactly how it works. This is all assuming.
So, assuming it's 50% round up on one and 50% round down on the other, you are 10% to get the 3 exact mods you want doubled, and you are 40% to get the exact 2 mods you want doubled.
What?
So there are, if you've got a 6 mod item as your input, then you're going to get 3 mods on the left ring, 3 mods on the right ring. That's the assumption we're making. There are 20 different ways that you can have your 3 mods allocated between your 3 positives allocated. And of those, 2 are wins and 18 are losses if you want to get 3 exact mods. So I'd say that your input ring is +1 all skills, +1 fire skills, and tier 1 life. Not input ring, input amulet, and then 3 garbage mods. There are 20 different ways that they can be split between the left output and the right output, of which 2 of them you're going to consider a win because they have those mods doubled, and the other 18 you're going to consider a loss. 6 choose 3 for those of you that remember combinatorics from maths.
That is correct, but there's 2 things that I'm not actually that deep into maths, but I use statistics a lot in a lot of fields. So 2 things come to my mind that are a little bit confusing here. First of all, the outcomes are linked; they're not independent. Yeah. If you pick out one individual mod and assuming every time the mod is either doubled or negated, you will always get at least 1 mod you want. So let's say you want your life doubled. So 1 win is automatically right. Yeah. So if you want that to happen, you basically need for the second mod to align with the chance that you want. So the second mod you want, the chance is 50%, as far as I'm aware, because you will automatically win on the first mod. You will always get the ring with 1 mod if you want it, right? Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay. There's two mods left that double and 3 mods that negate double. And so you're 2 in 5 to get your second mod. Because there are 2...
You're right. You're right.
Then your third mod is 1 in 4 because there is 1 mod left that's going to double. Yeah. And there are 3 mods left that won't double.
So that assumes that you want to double all 3 mods. I think there's cases where you actually want to negate a certain mod, like Doriani's prototype, in which case this actually might be more favorable for you.
It's more favorable, yeah.
Especially if you're making the ring for sale, you don't really care about whether you get a huge negative lightning res so you can sell it to a Doriani's dude, or you get a huge positive one so you can sell it to someone else.
Both us and everyone else has made an assumption that it's always going to be 3 and 3. Has that been written anywhere? Have we seen that?
No, this is just purely inferred from the material.
It's I'm wondering if it's actually just a straight up 50-50 chance of everyone. Is it literally possible, though incredibly rare, for me to just be I doubled 6 stats. I am a god.
That would be ridiculous. I doubt it.
But we've seen nothing that is not half the mods rounded up on one side, half the mods rounded down on the other. And usually GGG will show one of the most extreme outcomes possible.
If it were possible, if it weren't guaranteed, if it's literally just a 50-50 shot, do we know what the math would be on the chance to get 6 doubles?
It's actually quite good for you.
32.
Yep. So I don't think that's the case. That's way too easy.
No way. Yeah.
Way too easy.
I could easily cross 32 disgusting rings and just slam them in. That can't be the case.
No,
I can't imagine. I can't imagine them making a very, very small chance that, let's say, 4 are doubled, 2 are negated on 1 ring, and maybe even a smaller for 5, and maybe even a smaller for 6 one. But it wouldn't be 1 in 32. It need to have some sort of incredible returns. So it would be maybe for 6, it would be 1 in 100,000, because otherwise you have literally a ring that every single stat is doubled, and then you buy yourself a mirror ring, and you're wearing 4 rings. So, I don't think that will ever happen.
It'll look like you're wearing 2 extra chest pieces that were really, really good.
And also you can count that as double because of Doriani's prototype existing. So negative lightning resist is a positive mod.
Yeah, I'd even argue that there's probably more mods where the negative is actually an upside as well.
Self-freeze, self-shock. All kind of the elements, these things can be used by fulcrum builds.
Yeah, that and negative resists are, even if you're not Doriani's, they're not necessarily a downside, because nowadays we have access to resists from so many sources. It's so easy to get irresists capped and overcapped for weakness, and we all have curse effect reduction and all that.
What I'm going to be going for,
right,
will be a top tier lightning, so that no matter what happens to it, it's good. And then 2 of the lowest tier mods that I can think of, like, I want something that says like 6 fire and 3 light and 3 cold or something, and then really good prefixes, right? And then I'm just going to sit there and hope, because I've now guaranteed the one mod that I want, the first one, because that's always going to be there, and we've guaranteed lightning that's going to be good, because it's either doubled and it's a stupid amount of lightning res, or it's negative and it's great for Doriani's, and now you've got 2 stats guaranteed.
Mm.
And then, so now you're only rolling for 2 more stats, and that feels like the best way for me anyway. That feels like the best way to go about it.
We'll have to see.
Someone pointed out in chat that GGD posted items that have got wrong numbers of prefixes and suffixes as outcomes from this as well. Yeah. So
let's quickly talk about that. Is that from items that you put in, or I think that's only from because there's 2 different ways that you can get rewards from like this mirrored mechanic, and one of them is the lake offers you 2 mirrored opposites of like 1 reward, and you get to pick one, and the other one is that you bring in a ring that you already crafted or got from somewhere else, and that then gets split. So I believe that on the latter example, where you bring in a ring, you don't get shuffled prefixes or suffixes, but from what we've seen, like the frequency of odd numbers of prefixes and suffixes, makes me think that that the rings that the lake offers you like have a chance to spawn just with 4 suffixes and 2 prefixes, or have a chance for suffixes to count as prefixes, or vice versa.
So the other one that's messy is the convoking ring that they gave as an example.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, there was at least 2 that were wrong.
There was a convoking ring on pathofexile.com/Kalandra that had some really strange looking stats, like 66 lightning resist from memory. And I'm not sure whether there is a general change to the way that rare items are generated by the game, which would be huge, because like I've already said that all existing crafting guides are pretty much dead unless they're modified, but that would be even more substantial. Like that would be a huge transformation of fossil crafting if you can now have 2 prefix for suffix items and stuff like that. But yeah, that almost looked like it was a 7 mod ring.
I remember it, but I can't find it right now on the /Kalandra.
Pathofexile.com/Kalandra, I think, and then there'll be a section where there's new items. Let's see if I can find it.
It only just occurred to me right then, because you were talking about fossils, that there might be delve mods that we could double.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's going to be a thing. When you bring in a ring, bring it in with essence mods, with delve mods, with temple mods. Like, the options are quite
10% life reservation efficiency.
Self-cursing. I mean, potentially negated curse rings could curse yourself or curse
Plus
you.
+2
Those
skeletons.
I found the ring. It's in the press kit.
It's in the press kit. I got that on the PC.
Right. There you are.
I'll bring it up.
So I just posted it in our chat. But
perfect.
Yeah, it's in the press kit. Minion item _bone ring is the file name.
I think the chat is delayed for me.
But the things that look like explicit mods: 14 all attributes, 35 dex, 17 to 33 fire to attacks, 40 fire res, 66 lightning res, minion move speed 30%, minion damage 32%. Unless that last thing is a hybrid with the move speed and damage, that feels like it's a 7 mod ring.
Yeah, that's likely a hybrid, but then also it has 4 suffixes because all attributes, dexterity, fire res, and lightning res.
No, this is a regular drop.
Yeah, that's true. Bone rings are in the regular drop pool. They're not from the lake mechanic exclusively. Which makes it even weirder, right? And it doesn't have the mirror tag, so you can't say that this is one that someone brought in to modify.
And this has no mods above level 64 either, because the required level is 51.
Yeah. Weird. What do we make of this, guys? What is it, do you think? Do you think, like, these somehow in this new league we get to bend the rules of item creation? I mean, that must be it.
So chances are that there are surprises about the whole lake thing that we don't know, because in all honesty, I didn't find it way too interesting when they first announced just doubling and negating normal items. So there might be some things we don't know, but there's also the chance that this is simply something they've created for the press kit and it doesn't actually exist. But I don't know why they'd go with all the bother. So it is very strange. I mean, the 66 lighting resistance itself is incredibly strange. This mod alone already kind of gives the idea that, well, this shouldn't exist like that. And maybe there's some new hybrid mods we don't know, but it really doesn't make sense. So I'm going to assume that there's maybe some special secret encounter maybe in the Kalandra where you can just throw in an item and maybe it spits it out with an additional mod, because if we can put an item in there that gets mirrored, maybe if there's a final Kalandra encounter, instead of giving you uniques, it gives you some new rewards where you can create an Uber mirrored version or something like that. I'm not certain, but it's definitely exciting.
It could also, however, be that it's not, in this case, the lake mechanic. I mean, obviously that's implied by it not having a mirror tag, and that it's just that the bone rings, the new minion items, have like a unique mod pool, similar to how, convoking ones can roll minion stats that normal ones can't roll. Maybe bone rings can roll attributes as prefixes for whatever reason, because summoners need attributes. Or extra high resists. I don't know. Maybe that's specific to the bone ring. Just because, hear me out. The idea behind the minion change was that they take away power from the minion gems and the gem levels and the ascendancies and put it into items. And they were like, well, summoners now, like everyone else, will have to itemize to let their power grow. But summoners previously already utilized all 6 affix slots on their items, right? Summoners are pretty much starved for stats in a lot of spaces, and they're also starved for sockets. So if you now put a bone ring on that doesn't even have a socket and has the minion all res, great, that's great to help your minions survive, but it's not really a chase stat for summoners, right? So you're giving up a ring slot that could be a socket, then it makes sense that they'd allow those rings to roll the explicit stats in a funky way that supports summoners. What do you guys think?
Here's a question for you, though. Let's say that you were leveling through Act 10 on a character that is a Frostblades Raider, and you had this drop. You identified this.
Yes.
You would equip this.
Yes.
Like, you'd be like, wow, I am putting this straight on. I don't care about this minion damage garbage on it. I'm using this for its other stats. And
level 51, maybe,
like a really strange thing.
Although as a raider, I wouldn't care that much about Dex. But yeah, the resist would be nice.
Yeah.
This
is a Goldrum. And it's got 5 damage to attacks. It's got it's better than a Goldrum.
Yeah. Yep. To be honest, my current theory, what I'm kind of thinking, maybe this is some sort of Lake of Kalandra recombination. So I've been actually thinking maybe Lake of Kalandra. We've seen most of the boss drops or most of the unique reviews. I'm going to assume Lake of Kalandra has some sort of final boss or final fight, and maybe it has a crafting secret reward instead of a unique reward. And maybe in this case, you actually get to put in 2 rings, and maybe they get merged into 1 or something like that. And this, to me, looks more like something a little bit recombined, because I have no idea how you'd usually get 66 resistances on a normal ring, and this is what puts me off. I don't think it's hybrid. I think the secret here is some sort of Krango ring. There's probably some special way to create such an item, and I believe it is very unpredictable and maybe tied behind some very endgame mechanics to keep it exciting and secret. But I guess we'll see.
I'll tell you one thing for sure. I was very, very, very sad to hear that they weren't keeping recombinators, because I loved them. And now that we've seen these new items, I'm like, oh no, fair enough. You don't want to let me recombinate jewelry things, this stuff, man. Like that's fair. I'm like, if they let us recombinate, you're about to start looking at me like wearing 2 chess pieces on each ring. Like that's not It's not okay.
Yeah,
I just
also
started
like
looking for
recombinate like two mirror things and then only recombinate the upsides and not the negative stats. Yeah, never.
Yeah,
never, that's not going to happen.
Like, I get it. I'm still sad that we're not going to have recombinators. I did love them, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, I get it. You can't give us this.
Even if they do come back, they don't work on mirrored anymore. So all of the items that we create with these crazy high stats will not work with recombinators in the future. Sadly, but also reasonably so.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I just dug into that ring, and the reason it's level 51 is actually the fire damage to attacks. That's the only mod on that we know to be level 64. High level 64 required. If that wasn't
we don't
there,
know about the minion move speed and minion damage, but yeah,
we don't know about those. They could be
how to get 66 lightning res.
Honestly, the one thing that speaks against this being the result of some absolute like end game Lake of Kalandra crafting reward thing is that this is like literally from the press kit and advertised as minion item _ bone ring. So this is one example for the new itemization options for necromancers. So I'd somehow be confused if they, instead of showing us like a straightforward mid-tier ring that it pretends to be with the level 51 requirement, if they just showed us like a super juiced, like endgame crafted thing that like went around a couple of corners to get to that. I don't see it. I don't see them giving us like some super complicated reward result. This needs to be a straightforward ring. I'd be shocked if you can't naturally roll this.
I'd be shocked if you can, but
yeah, that as well. I guess I'm shocked anyway.
We're just shocked that it exists.
Well, I guess if you're shocked, at least the leak mechanic is working, or the new gems.
You're shocked. You want to get more grand spectrums with the ailment avoidance. But there were more examples of like crazy suffix and prefix recombinations.
Really?
I think there was some. This is not the only item, right? Sirgog, correct?
It was definitely two.
There was definitely another item that was shown. Possibly.
Have a look at the shield. The shield looks like it has a lot of mods on it. Ghoul Call Fossilized Spirit Shield, also from the same press kit.
Can you show it, please?
Okay, I'll show the bone shield, the minion shield, was it? Fossilized Spirit Shield. Oh yeah, this has an awful lot of mods, yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So
minion damage implicit, we got increased energy shield, flat life, flat mana.
There's 9 lines of text, 2 of which I identify as hybrid mods.
And the thing with the percentage,
and at
which
least
still
4
gives us
prefixes.
7 mods.
At least
and still
4
gives
prefixes.
us 4 prefixes. Yeah. It's 9 lines of text, but two that can be identified as hybrid mods that exist. Like we can remove 2 of those lines, but it still ends up with 7, and it still ends up with 4 prefixes, at least as far as I know, which is too many, and it's not allowed to exist. So I don't. Yep. Weird.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see the data mine
one
mod
item. And if it would be just one item, I could assume it's a mistake. But if there's like 2 items or more, that becomes very ominous.
Yeah. Imagine there's a world where we come into this league and we find out that you're just allowed to have 7 mods now on any item. Like there's a world where that happens.
If
So
they're
here I was thinking that now you'd be able to have 4 prefix 2 suffix rares with a 6 cap or 2 and 4, and I was thinking, oh gee, there goes a whole bunch of fossil strategies. No more +1/+1 wand crafting.
Yeah, but like letting us have 7 mods on rares is like, that's some strong encouragement to use some exalted orbs, is what that is.
Yeah.
I don't think you can actually get okay, so there's 2 options in my head how this is going to play out right now. And the one is the more likely. The more likely option is that these minion bases just get access to a crazy new pool of hybrid mods that we haven't seen before and that you can't get on other items just because minion builds need to compensate for the fact that they lost a lot of power, so they have to use special item types now, but they get more stats on that item. That seems reasonable to me. And the thing that's less likely in my head is that some of the Lake of Kalandra rewards that we haven't seen yet allow you to add mods, possibly. Like either maybe the Krangling mechanic ignores current mod restrictions, or maybe we even get to add a mod to an item, like similar to Leo's Exalt bench from Betrayal, but then ignoring item limitations, like add a mod to an item ignoring the maximum limit of prefixes and suffixes. That'd be a cool reward bench.
Well, as long as it's capped at once per item. Oh, as long as it's capped at going at a 7th mod or something.
Yeah.
Or it has a chance of breaking the item.
Yeah, but it wouldn't it wouldn't change the limit on the item. It would just for that one add a mod ignore it, and then if you reroll the item, you'd be left with 6 mods again, right?
It's worth saying that Abyss Jewels do break the existing limits of mod counts on items. Like with there's that Trove, there's that Atlas passive. I can't think what it's called in the northeast of the tree.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called either, but it allows them to drop corrupted with up to 6 explicit stats.
Yep. So there may be some weird shenanigans like that.
Maybe.
Or alternately, it could simply be a mistake.
I don't believe in mistakes. GGG is too deliberate with what information they put out. They triple check everything that they put out.
Also, a mistake twice. That's a pattern.
Yeah. Man, there's so much about this league we don't know for sure. There's so much. I'm so excited. Can we start now? I'm ready.
It's just a couple of hours.
I'm not.
Wait, no, I'm not ready. We don't have filters. No, I'm not ready. Tomorrow's fine. I can't live without NeverSink's filters. That literally would ruin the league. We can wait a day. It's fine.
I think we can use the one from previous league.
If it be necessary, we're actually having always backup plans. So we try to fit in as much content as possible on the Twitch stream on the final day. It's really useful to assess some community information. But if it be necessary, we could probably get everything live to work in, let's say, an hour most. But so we are really trying to make the most out of the information. But we always like to have a backup plan, because if something stops working on release day, or we need to have something to get it to work before everything launches. So
right. Because it's 1 hour, code 1 hour, please. Like there's a chance that something just goes wrong on the final day, and you're like, "Oh, I've broken everything, and I can't figure out what it is." And the league starts in an hour. You do able to just go scrap that, make something live that works right this second, and then fix it later.
So for the final day, it's only soft tasks left. Does this unique go into tier B or C? How do we put the divination card? What tier does it go in? But nothing on the level of coding. Nothing like we need to expand this new command, we need to implement this new function, we need to expand the backend, we need to make new deployment pipelines or modify any kind of important configuration. Just soft stuff. It's really mostly a way to spread information, to inform the users, to get community opinions in. It's really mostly also advertisement. So since it doesn't work before the start of the new league, we can afford that, because it would just break and we would just get a million messages. Why does my filter not work on standard?
Oh, that must be the worst. Like on top of like already like having a fire that you need to put out and everything not working, and then getting like thousands of messages, your inbox like literally blown up.
I think I already told you once that there was this one guy who started playing, and he was messaging that his hideout disappeared and the league mechanic stopped spawning, and the league ended, and he thought the filter broke it, and he never knew that leagues ended. So.
That's a good one.
He thought the filter broke the league. That's great.
I thought you were gonna break up that other crazy guy who said that you're like a, what was it? I can't get it together, but he told you that he's gonna contact your superior and he's gonna complain about you with your boss.
I'm still waiting for his application.
You're gonna complain to NeverSink's boss. I'm gonna apply and take your job. Like, apply to who, bud? What? What do you mean?
That was one of my favorite Twitter moments in this last year. That was so good. All right, we had a good laugh. We're all thoroughly confused by the new items, and I don't think we can make any sense of it without more information.
And excited.
Yep.
Confused and excited.
Yeah, it'd be good to see some crazy stuff happen.
Just like the first time anyway.
Oh, right. The first time you had a sandwich.
Yeah, that's definitely what I was going to say.
There's a crazy amount of adjusted uniques, and we have been told that they drop significantly more rarely, even though we don't know exactly what that means. That could be anywhere between like 20% more rare and twice as rare, or 3 times as rare even in some cases. But two-part question: do you have any eyes on a specific unique that has been changed? And more on a general note, how does this knowledge change your approach to the league start? What build you pick or plans you make? NeverSink, have you had time to look at the uniques?
Thunderfist.
I have like a 60 list of uniques with notes, how to treat them in the filter, and yeah, quite a bit. So first of all, to keep things short, I think it's easier to plan in this league around the boss drops than to plan around random drops. Because, for instance, if I go for something like Thunderfist, I have no chance of knowing if that's now T1 level. But if I need something like Annihilating Light, I can actually guarantee that I'll probably get it in like day 2 latest, because you'll get a lot of those. So this is basically my change to the league start approach. I'm mostly planning around boss drops or around rare items. But other than that, I'm actually super excited for them reducing the unique drops rate. I've been looking at the filter stats in the past leagues, and there's like 80 to 90% uniques are in the hidden tier, and it just didn't feel fun. So I'm not really happy with all of the buffs. I feel like some of them could be more interesting or stronger, but overall I think it's a good first step, and overall it's very exciting. I hope they'll actually proceed with this notion. I would rather have much fewer uniques, maybe some leveling ones, but ideally they wouldn't drop very much in the end game. But these would be very impactful, very powerful, and I think it just adds something. I feel like the idea of finding a unique is just something that should be exciting, and uniques have completely lost their property over the years.
So yeah, the real interesting part of this is that I actually expect that at least me as a player and anyone who follows my filters will see more uniques this league than we ever have in the past, not less.
Yes.
Because I have an intention of leaving far more of them on than I ever would because of the divine changes. Yes. I expect a lot of the mid-tier things that you would divine to now have like a range where they're expensive on one end and cheap on the other, whereas in the past, they were always like, oh, this is just a 10 or 12 C unique, and if it's perfect, it'll be 20 or 30. Now it'll be like, oh, this is an 8 or 6 C unique, but if it's a perfect one, it might be 120 chaos, right? Like it might. So because of that range and the divine change, there's so many more unique. It won't affect like the 1C uniques, right? Like you're still not you never divined Goldrims to begin with. They just perfect Goldrims were that expensive because so many of them drop on the ground and you just bought them. And I expect that sort of stuff to stay the same, right? Like you'll just be able to buy good Goldrims because they'll still be relatively common, presumably. But like your mid-tier ones that did get divined in the past, they're all staying on.
Yeah, and also you got to factor in like let's split out let's break down what Balor was saying into 2 categories. There's the Lion's Roar / Rumi's Concoction, the uniques that are good, but that are not all that rare. Those ones, I agree exactly with Balor on the sort of price trajectory. I've been hiding those 5C items from my loot filter in the past because I don't want to trade a 5C item. I'm now going to be looting them. I'm going to ID them, and then I may 3-for-1 them. Then you have the rarer ones, and here we're talking Brass Dome, which I think will be something you're definitely always picking up Brass Dome in the next league. If it rolls with a 1, 2, or a 3, you're just going to feed it. You're going to either feed it into a 3-for-1 recipe, or you're going to sell it to someone else for that purpose. and they're going to basically sacrifice 2 brass stones to divine the other one and have a chance of getting themselves a +5. If you had a +4, I think someone might buy that as a budget chest for more than you could sell a 1, 2, or 3 for. But if you get a +5, that's going to seriously be worth something. And this is going to be something we're going to have to figure out over time. I really don't envy NeverSink dealing with this, because stuff's going to be absolutely crazy, and you're then going to have to try and work out what you really care about on particular items. But then there'll be the top end uniques that people will still apply divine orbs to. And here we're thinking Ashes of the Stars, Watcher's Eyes with great mods, stuff like that.
That's actually great. I think this is really, really good for the game. It's a huge power loss for the players, but it's a huge boost for the game, because previously we were able to pretty much buy the best uniques or divine them, but now you want to identify uniques and find potentially good rolls. So I think it keeps things exciting. But at the same time, it's probably the biggest nerf to the players is nothing in the skill tree or nothing in the passives, but the actual power nerfs to uniques. Because if your build relied on uniques and your uniques had high rolls like Ashes of the Stars, you will need much more currency, and that means much more time to actually get to the same power level. And I think that's perfectly good, because you keep picking up uniques, the economy stays more interesting, cheap uniques will be more available, because if you find something with a low roll, you need a low roll room, and it's better than nothing. You buy it for like 1 chaos. But you want a high roll roomie that will be worth multiple divines now. And this is an interesting approach to balancing. And I think this by itself was a bit of a genius move by GGG. And sure, there's some problem with divination cards and shards and acquiring divines overall. But overall, I feel like they've done a really clever move with that. Like from the meta game perspective, I think that's a move in the really right direction to get the uniques in a more interesting spot.
I will just add one thing to what NeverSink was saying. A Rumi's concoction that's perfectly rolled should never be more than about 45 times the price of a normal one, and that's because of the 3-for-1 recipe.
That's a lot of, doing it 45 times is a lot of time. Time has value.
Yeah, but there will be people, but it's actually only 31 that you'd need in practice, and there'll be people who are buying them. People will find a niche in this game,
yes,
and they will make them very efficient. Very efficient.
Yes, but sometimes there's gaps in these niches. For instance, if you compare in the fated unique times, if you compare the uniques that were fated and unfated, there were often huge price gaps between them, because people simply didn't bother with that. And maybe there would be, and the people who did bother would set up such a huge price gap, so you had like a 50 chaos item, because people are often lazy. But overall, I agree. I think this is actually very interesting. People will actually be buying up uniques to do 3-1 now. And this is I'm not sure if I'm excited or annoyed by that, because you need to trade more, but it's definitely an interesting development. And I think PoE lives from the meta being different every league, so this is good, I guess. I hope.
I don't think anyone should ever, in any case ever, be annoyed by a sale that happens.
No, but by buying.
Yeah, that's buying them for 3-1 is like a choice. So if you're doing that to make profit,
I don't think many people will do that. Some will, but I think it's also a very special case. So you need a case where buying 3 items, you need some super high roll items, maybe like Endvarious, but those won't be too cheap. So you need to find the 3 cheapest items where the max roll or the chance to have an outcome for a high roll will be good enough. It's basically the comparison of buying 3 lottery tickets, and the price of the lottery tickets is so cheap, or the win is so big that it's actually worthwhile, plus the time invested. So I think it's more of a case of that you'll be collecting just some uniques that you might find interesting or have high rolls and maybe sell them yourselves 3-1. But we'll see. It's a new world. I guess we have to figure out how this works.
And what it really accomplishes is it makes uniques feel impactful and unique again. Yep. It really doubles down on their identity, because previously I feel like when your build was using an item in a slot, say the conversion gloves, it was way too easy, like even like a week or 2 in, to just buy like a full stash tab of that item and just mass corrupt them, for example. And now with a lot of uniques being changed to higher roll ranges, or at least one stat with a high roll range, and then divines being super expensive, since and the uniques being less frequently dropped, I think it's gonna just feel so much better and so much more rewarding if you get like a perfect roll gold rim. Like, yeah, sure, you're never gonna divine that, not before the change, not after the change. But I miss those times where, like, 4 years ago when I started playing the game, or even 6 years ago, and you borrowed a gold rim from a guild mate to level. And then, because everyone was playing hardcore back then, and then you die with it, and then your guildmate is mad. And that's just gonna feel more impactful now. It's just gonna be, I don't know, a more valuable thing to lend out and to hand around. I like that.
Yeah, I think that we've been hiding so many uniques. Like, someone in chat said 90% of uniques. I do not think it's 90%. I think it's like 95, 98%. And of the ones that you don't hide, a large majority of them were worms, molts, and stuff like that. That
exactly
is there because you can't hide them. And jewels, unique jewels were the main one. Like, you could conceivably hide unique cobalts, maybe. That's a dubious choice. You'd never hide the other two because they were big value ones.
Exactly, and you weren't hiding them simply because you couldn't really filter them. This is the only reason they are not hidden. If there would be a way to throw them in the filter and say, hey, you just want to see headhunters, the amount of uniques you'd see would be dropped down incredibly.
I was just saying that you could justify hiding all unique cobalt jewels because there's no...
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but you can't do it with Viridians. Viridian jewel is a leather belt. It's got one big outcome.
I've been actually considering doing that, but that would have such a absurd impact on the economy. I'm actually afraid of just touching that button.
Yeah.
Just a quick side thought before I forget it, before it leaves me again. I'm just looking on the Kalandra page, the reveal page, and the ultimatum's coming back, as we all know, as a unique map. But I just noticed it's an engraved ultimatum. Does that mean that other engraved ultimatums that we had, like inscribed ultimatums from back in Ultimatum League that we still have as items in our standard stash, are now activatable again, or you can open them in the map again? Or is that different?
No, I don't think so. They're different items. There's
it's
two
engraved
ultimatum items, and I don't really understand how they work exactly, but there's two item types. There's the item piece, and the item piece has been previously only used for one single item in the game, and that's the Harbinger pieces. So these drops that you get from the Harbinger map where you piece together uniques, there's the ultimatum pieces that now drop. And then there's the engraved ultimatum. So maybe we'll find some sort of ultimatum challenge pieces and somehow bring them together. So I think that's kind of my idea how it works now. Or maybe it's just some sort of meta item that doesn't drop, but they need to make existent. I'm not quite certain how it works, but there's these two items, the piece and the actual final engraved ultimatum. So I suppose we somehow find pieces in the WoW areas or the WoW contents, or maybe you need to find one in each different WoW zone, or maybe like one in Incursion, one in the WoW temple, one
from Aziri.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. And then you piece them together into ultimatum. This is kind of my thoughts how it might work, but this is just based on the filtered data. So I suppose we need to find that out in game.
Blast, I hoped when I saw the item piece that it was going to function like the simulacrum. It's like, you run Val Temple, you get 23 splinters. You run Doriani's Machinarium, you get 45. You run Uberatsri, you get 42. And then when you've got a certain amount of them, it overflows. But it makes sense if it's the same mechanic as the Harbinger piece, you're going to need to probably get one of everything. And that's going to mean you're going to need to probably get the Doriani's Machinarium one. Will be rare. That's stupid map again.
Maybe, but pieces never stacked so far, so it's a little bit weird, but I guess we'll see.
They could still just be shards that are just called pieces for no particular reason, right?
No, it's a class, and classes define how items are treated. So, for instance, a fragment would be something like a dusk or dawn fragment, or something you get for to enter or sharpified. But pieces are a very, very special type of items that have been rarely used so far. So they're usually attached to some very weird mechanics. Maybe there's another piece, but I forgot. But I think it's really just Harbinger pieces. And that's why I really don't know what to expect. Maybe they're using it for something else, but maybe these are items that actually trigger some sort of event on the code when you move them. This is kind of my idea of what pieces are. So there's probably something. I mean, the only unique thing about the pieces from Harbinger is that if you move them around, they check if they can assemble into a unique. And I suppose maybe this is some mechanic they're reusing here. But really, I'm excited to see that. I just don't know how to treat them. So right now, I've just given them bright red background, and they look a little bit like logbooks, and we'll see how it works.
Yeah. It's just the default position when you don't know what something is going to be is just be like,
show it,
highlight it big, and figure out whether it's worth it later, maybe.
But not too big. It needs to be visible. You can't miss it, but don't give it exalted or prices. People are going to hate it.
Imagine if you'd given exalted orb sounds to every sentinel last league. Or to every power core.
Oh, man.
That would be a great troll filter.
I don't know whether you have that still in your item filter in NeverSink, but I remember when I'm using like a very outdated customized version for race practice, like a customized version that Tai Killer made with like specific sounds for every like piece of currency that can drop, so you know when you get an off-screen transmute drop and you can walk back. And whenever I use that on a league start, then the new league items drop with like a really weird formatting, like with super pink and big. And I think that's your like fail-proof catch for anything that's not listed in the filter, that like it gets highlighted and shown. And I really, that's just what that reminded me of when you say anything new, just make sure that it's visible. And
It also has a double purpose. One purpose is to show new items, and the second one is to help those people who forget to update. I mean, if the filter won't crash completely, which often happens because they move around mods and stuff, if someone forgets to update, they'll still see something.
In theory, if you're running, something's gone wrong. If you see that giant pink, in theory, you're not supposed to. Like, that's not.
Well, yes, but maybe, for instance, maybe there's a new unique and it's on a unique base type that we've never seen before being unique. So something has been unrevealed. And then it will be pink because it's unassigned before. So previously, when I just started making the filter, I would just say, hey, these are the items that are expensive and everything else is shown like that. Now, basically, for most sections, every single base type that exists has a category. And if it's not categorized, it's pink. And there's also some sort of backend little database that calls the aspect database, where you can assign every single item certain properties, like the dying sun only drops from Shaper. So when a ruby flask drops, I don't actually need to consider the dying sun for the pricing. Sorry, the coruscating elixir for the pricing, because coruscating elixir never drops, but dying sun drops only from the Shaper. So these aspects are really useful. And together with these aspects, and the steering information, if it's there or not, I can fairly well adjust the unique steering. This is some meta background how this whole thing functions. For instance, I'm going to use a reworked, buffed, nerfed, and strong buffed aspects tomorrow to help the filter at the start to actually see items correctly. So everything that's strong buffed can't be below tier 2. Everything that's nerfed can't be above tier 2, or everything that's buffed can't drop into the hideable tier. Everything that's reworked will have its price slightly higher considered at the start, because I'm using previous league economy data, something like 3 leagues in from the last year, so it can't drop into the hideable tier. And this is kind of these small automatic nuances, because handling like 900 items, 900 uniques by hand, you simply don't have the brain capacity, especially if you need to redo it. After you've done like 100, you don't really see words anymore, because you're so tired from checking rows, tired from checking APIs, tired from checking PoE wiki, and I'm trying to get automatic updates every 4 hours done. So this is just, unless I have like a small basement full of gamers doing that nonstop in 2 shifts, this is really not feasible. So this is a way how I can provide this meta automation so that the PC can do things in a clever way without actually knowing PoE.
It's always so fascinating to hear about all these little nuances and like little considerations that go into this filter.
Sure, and please stop me. I don't want to hog up all the time.
I find it super fascinating, and I've seen the general notion in chat was also that people enjoy that, so that's great.
What do people think are 3 interesting uniques that are getting changed? Like, not necessarily the very best 3, but just 3 that you think are really cool.
Well, I'll start because I instantly have in my mind popping up the what was it, Storm Charger, the boots that leave shock ground, because they're like they're in line with how lightning rolls work. So they have like a really low roll and a really high roll, or like really high top end, and they can roll between 1 and 40% movement speed. And 40% movement speed boots sounds really good. Sure, they're not going to beat out your influence boots with like tailwind and stuff, but you know, when you get like above 35% pair early on in the league, and then they also have, I believe, shock effect duration or shock effect increase or something like that, some synergy with lightning. They sound pretty interesting. And you want 3 uniques.
Well, you decide if you want to go with 3 or you want less.
I'll have to look at the list again. Honestly, I've been reading into so many other things. I just can't keep everything in the basket. If you add more, then 3. Things fall out in the back. Balor, what?
I got 3 immediately in my head when you were like top 3, and I was like, Thunder Fist.
Yeah,
insane. Super excited about that.
Yeah, I didn't want to say the same.
Ephemeral Edge.
Yeah.
Oh, yep.
That one looks really nice. And Cloak of Flames.
Oh, Cloak of Flames, I'd agree, yeah.
Yes.
Cloak of Flames being my 3rd, it's like that. Because that works on dots as well. Instead of just hits, that's absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess that's important to clarify for everyone listening. The conversion mod for incoming physical damage on the Cloak of Flame unique body armor now reads physical damage taken as fire damage instead of physical damage from hits. They also massively buffed it up to 40%. But yeah, that's pretty crazy if you think about how many physical degenerative effects are there in the game. I mean,
there's also only one item in the past or one other item in existence that does that, which is the Dawnbreaker Shield. Can roll up to 20% fizz taken as fire. And that's the only other item in the entire game. It's the only other way that you can convert damage over time. So you can now get that and the Cloak of Flames and get 60% of your fizz damage over time taken.
And this is amazing, especially with some sort of Leocast and Petrified Blood stuff. I've been already looking into that. This is really, really, and they work so well together. So I think they've been designed to be used together as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Blood Rage. It's going to be so easy to sustain with that.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah.
Or just stuffing up on Ubrelda. Oh, I'm standing in the bad stuff on the ground again. Oops. Oh, who cares?
All right. You have any 3 uniques? Or maybe just one that you want to highlight? NeverSink, go first.
I have a list, but I've took some out of those that are interesting. So I think Arakutsiki is something really interesting. It might not be the best item, but it gives you phasing and elusive now if you're playing around with low life. And I think we need to kind of bounce between being not on low life and being on low life. So it's like this wonderful for certain Petrified Blood builds. But if you can do that, you can basically sustain phasing and elusive with that. And I think it's a really interesting way to spice up this amulet because elusive is a very valuable thing. Then definitely Heat Shiver is interesting. You can combine freeze and so it's a rework to Frostferno, and you can combine freeze and burn elements really effectively with them. So I think we will see some interesting things going on. And I actually forgot how. Oh yeah, Ralikesh and Patience, the boots. So the boots have so many crazy and interesting use cases now. You can stay still and use some sort of. I don't think that 2-4 wand is quite weak for that, but just an example, you instantly get all the charges. And I've seen also some people doing some crazy, silly ideas. I think it was this interesting interactions video where you use the Ralikesh boots, you stand still, you weapon swap to another slot where you don't have enough, let's say, dexterity to use the boots no longer apply, so your minimum charges become maximum charges instantly because they don't get removed. So you now can discharge and can swap back and get all charges back. So there's a lot of really weird things that will be done with these boots. And just in general,
is that how it works? If you have minimum equipped and then you remove the minimum, you keep the charges, or
you
technically
keep
yes,
for the duration until they fall off.
Technically yes. Rallycation Patience usually has this line that remove charges when you move. So usually it doesn't apply, but if you don't have the stats to wear that item, you can't get the negative impact of the boots. So you weapon swap to a gear set where you can't equip the item. Or so let's say you have a high level gem in there. Yeah, so there's some silly stuff you can do with that. And I've been looking. And you can also have these, I think it was Champion or Slayer that could apply the frenzy charges to the endurance charges. Then you have the Blight amulet so that you can do the same with power and frenzy charges. So you can technically have like 30 charges on a weapon swap. Yeah, I can see that working.
That's cool. I didn't think of the dexterity trick. That's really cunning.
Yeah, that's straight up fascinating. Wow. Crazy.
It's a big weapon swap ignite discharge build gonna be floating around.
Yeah, that's bizarre. That sounds really clunky though.
Yeah. I'm not starting with that.
It's definitely a concept worth exploring though.
Oh, there's a new unique helmet announced.
Oh wow.
Oh my god, it's so good.
Live react. Oh, perfect time to do the podcast, really.
Oh, yeah.
It's so good.
Let's have a look, see at this. New helmet. Thanks. Hey, help.
Okay.
I'm slow.
What on earth?
Everyone has seen it already. I'm still not there. New unique helmet in Lake of Kalandra. Okay, what we get here?
Level 95.
What?
Item level 95?
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, that's crazy good.
Is it?
It doesn't have life, no primary defenses.
All right, but
can you self-trigger suppress damage? Because otherwise it's okay. It's nice for leveling and it's nice to get early into the maps and get your ailment and your suppress kept. But unless you can self-trigger suppress damage, it's just okay. I think the item level is the weirdest part.
I don't think you can as of now, but there may be things that enable that going into 3.19, and also I think it really depends on what enemy you're fighting. Some enemies hit you quite rapidly with spells.
Yep.
If you're thinking about like firestormers or like skelly mages or stuff like that,
could be good for certain boss encounters as well.
Exactly, that's what I'm thinking.
So dexterity helmets can now roll with a top tier of 14%. So this is miles above. This is miles above tier 1 suppression now.
Yeah, we don't know how high it goes even. It's unlikely that 23 is the top roll.
I can assume at least 25. I think it's safe to assume that rolls up to at least 25. Because 23 is never going to be a max. But we've never that would just be weird.
Well, I mean, there's weird maximums in the game, but
yeah, there's plenty of weird ones.
I'm done. I just racked every part of my brain to figure out how to get an item level 95 item, and I can't do it.
No, it has to be a new zone or like a new scaling mechanism. I believe we were told that the Lake of Kalandra tiles get harder the further you stray away from the origin. So maybe that also adds an item level.
Maybe it's that.
No,
I think it's that.
Oh, you can get this from an Ober's Cursed Trove. That is raised to monster level 85. Then the final room will be 90, and then you have a Strongbox of Ascendancy. So you can get 95 currently, but that's
okay.
That is at meme level.
What are you rating the life recovery roll goes up to? 200? 250?
200. Oh, I reckon 200.
Yeah.
Thing is, if you're doing max res stuff and suppression, 200 life gain when you suppress is actually a pretty large amount. If you're doing max res stuff as well, you're taking so little damage.
I mean, 200 life is not negligible at all. I mean, even if you have like 8k life, that's still like what?
2.5%,
right? Yeah, that's still pretty good.
Like
4k life, then it's 5%.
Rare shields with like on block rolls are only like 5%.
Exactly, that's
what their block, and my block can only go to 75, not 100.
But this whole thing really lives from the idea if you can somehow deal spell damage to yourself. Maybe there's something you can do with one of the reversed mods that you can put into the Kalandra Lake. Maybe in some cases, I don't know. If you have a
life lost on spell hit,
something
you can't put influenced
like
items. You can't put influenced rings into the mirror.
But maybe, I'm just trying to think out because it feels like it's designed. So unless it's designed to be just a leveling item or an entry or mid-tier item when you just start mapping, or for just very niche situations, if you're able to somehow loop this could be amazing. This could be really, really interesting.
See, I look at this and I see this as being a way that you can consolidate a lot of important stats on one item, even beyond normal limits. Kind of like a ring like a rare ring that has like massive resists and catalysts on it. Like it's something that is just a problem solver. That's the way that I see this item.
Okay,
it may not be easy.
So just get a lot of ailment resist, get a lot of spell suppression to pretty much cap your stats out because it's the cheapest and best alternative at this level.
Yeah, but also you may be able to wear that into maps. Like, I mean, what are you missing from a rare helmet?
I mean, it requires level 30, which is not like that's not high, right?
No, at level 30, this is definitely a winner. I mean, at level 30, 280 evasion on a helmet is nuts.
I'd wear this up to and including Shaper, I think. I think you drop it past that in progression.
Well, yeah, depending on what your options are, but yeah. Definitely crazy good power level for a rare item.
For level
for a unique item.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you get it to level 30, you can pretty much skip through so much content because you're basically immune to most spell damage if you can suppress it.
Yeah, true. At level 30, like 200 life on suppression is insane.
If I dropped that early on my build, because I am starting as a ranger, like I'm on that side, I would take suppression far earlier than I would normally in my tree just because I had that. I'd be like, oh, so I already have like 20% suppression and I'm near the suppression wheel. I might just grab that.
I mean, just grab that. Mage Bang, that's called, isn't it?
The fact that it's posted with eye level 95 makes me think that this is not something that you can obtain at level 30 outside of trade.
Is 7 League Steps still drop restricted 75 plus, or am I wrong in thinking that? I think it's T3 drop anywhere and drop restricted level 75 plus.
This is why we must kill the racing scenes so that we can drop them earlier.
I want a chance to drop 7 League Steps while on my league start. While I be like, oh, I just got to Act 2 and I got 7 League Steps. I'm off.
Alright. Yeah, okay. So that's the second one of my uniques. I picked that. That's super interesting. And the last one I already mentioned, Obliteration. I've always been an Obliteration fan. Obliteration is great. Obliteration is love. Obliteration is life. But I've always felt like for the generic power gain that you get from the global explosions that are even unconditional, unlike the Profane Bloom explosions from Occultist, which require the enemy to be cursed, the ones on Obliteration are unconditional. You get, what was it, 25 or 20% per wand? And then you get wield the wands for a total of 40. And now what they did is they also buffed the physical as extra on Obliteration. You now get 30 to 40% physical as extra chaos rather than 13 to 15. Which, if you dual wield, getting up to 80% physical as extra chaos is insanely strong.
Paired with 2 Ming's Heart to die to any damage and basically have insane damage as well.
Mings was on my list of like, I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily one of the greatest uniques in the world, but it is just cool. Mings Heart is so exciting now.
Yep.
40 to 60% fizz added as chaos, but with the drawback's much worse.
I love this design. I think this is just super cool that there's create designs where you have a huge drawback, a huge advantage. Hey, try to build around that. And maybe if you can do that, you can do it in an interesting way. You get a huge advantage. I think that's a really good idea. The same way it goes with Smoku's Heart or whatever it is. Big drawback, big advantage. I think it's a awesome design philosophy. Instead of having this watered down, you get 10 attack speed. Why would they build around that? Why would they even bother?
Yeah, Mings looks fantastic as just something crazy now.
Absolutely agreed.
Side note, that helmet we just looked at?
Yeah.
It's gone. Disappeared. The tweet disappeared. It's gone.
What?
It doesn't exist.
They took it down?
Yeah, it was up for like 2 minutes. It's gone.
It was so evasive.
What happened?
I still got it open. I'm saving it. Saving it right now.
Save the image. I need the image. I accidentally closed it.
Wait, no. They didn't delete it, did they?
Yeah, it's gone.
This page doesn't exist?
Uh-huh.
Sorry, that tweet has been deleted. That is sus.
Except it's still in the Path of Exile Discord.
Forgot to delete it in the Discord. They can't delete it fast enough.
It's too late. They know once something's on the internet, it exists forever. That's
that's so
strange.
I wonder what went wrong with posting it.
So either the stats are incomplete or not the ones that they should be there, or they're somehow panicking about the item level. I don't know.
Maybe they posted it on the wrong day. Maybe they weren't supposed to post it today.
So now they're going to post something else instead. That would be awesome.
Nah, there has to be something wrong with it for them to take it away, right? Because if it was just like, oh, the wrong item, that was scheduled for another day, you'd just be like, oh, well, too late now.
Yeah.
Right?
Not any more days either.
Yeah.
But yeah, 95 can be done.
Crazy.
And there's also comments in chat. People are speculating maybe the Lake allows an increase in item level. In zone level as well beyond 84 or 85 is now the highest.
Yeah, I thought you get like a lot of +1 from the lake, right? I mean, when you visit the lake, like you said, it's probably 85 when you go there from the highest. Like if you have a lake token from the highest content, and then everything that you stray from the center might actually add +1 level. I don't know. They did say that it gets harder, so that would make sense.
They haven't really done that much though in the past, like adding zone levels to make things harder. Normally, like they've started using the delirium tech a lot more instead.
Yeah.
I do like adding levels though, just because like for some reason there's still some like 86 stuff that's really annoying.
Yeah, I mean some mods that require 86.
Yeah, mods that require level 86. It's the actual saddest part about losing Recombinators is that we also lost Blizzard Crowns at item level 86 and other bases because there's just no way to do that anymore. Maybe there's a way in the Kalandra place. Maybe
they announced that the Kalandra thing have kind of mirrored versions of the League. So they've shown, I think, the Delirium version as Essences or something. So I can imagine that maybe you can also find ritual type slots, puzzles. I'm not sure how these puzzle pieces are called.
Yep. That would be good. I haven't actually wanted to use one of them in a build in like a league or two, but like pretty impactful to lose them. So
yeah, and they cap at 83 as well. It's like 85 would be like 85 is where the big power jump is on helmets.
Yeah.
I'm so
86,
curious.
The only 86 mod is going. +3 local minion gems, that's being removed.
We've touched on the Exalt and Divine Orb things. Can we get like a round of estimates? How you think are they going to be valued in Chaos? What's the range that you think Divines and Exalts are going to be traded in next league? And just to be sure that everyone knows that this is purely speculative. We have no way of knowing. I guess NeverSink, you go first because you've already obviously asked yourself that question for the filter design.
I honestly don't know. It really depends on kind of how many uniques are in demand, how much harder it is to get a unique than to reroll it. But I would assume that they will be in the range of 150 to 300. I know it's a big range, but they'll be definitely more expensive than 150. But I also don't think they'll be above 400 or something like some people claim. I think that is a little bit exaggerated, but we'll see, I suppose. I think it will be between 150 and 300. But I also think exalts will stay higher than most people expect, especially if these some mods are still requiring exalts, and especially if we have possibilities to now mirror items that are so I think we'll see a few interesting developments there, but 150 to 300, so more expensive than your usual exalt price, but not exactly out of the world, I hope.
Oh, that's fair. What do you think, Balor?
I don't even know how to begin guessing at what the price will be, but what I do think is that an Exalt will be worth about 1/3. I think it'll be 3 Exalts to a Divine.
Oh, well, that's higher than I thought.
I do think I know one of two options that is going to happen in the early league. I think there's absolutely no way that we nail the prices immediately. They will either be well undervalued or well overvalued, and then there will be a huge market overcorrection where it goes in the other way. So if they start out too cheap, they will suddenly get actually too expensive and then settle back down to the middle. If they start out too expensive, they'll get dumped and become too cheap and then come back up to where they're supposed to be. I'm confident about that, but I don't know which way it'll go, right? I'm confident that it's going to be wrong, and then there's going to be big overcorrection and then a meet in the middle somewhere. But I don't know what way.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overhyping of Divine Orbs at the moment. The reason I don't think Divines will go much above 200 is that we have the primary use case for them is going to be meta mods when they get expensive. And we have a long-term history where the player base has just enough of the economic actors in the player base have decided meta mods are not worth more than 400C, that we've never really seen Exalts get through that limit before. And I don't think that's going to change with Divines. So they might push just past 200, but I don't think they'll stabilize above 200, despite there'll be a bunch of stuff like Balor was saying, where there's fear of not getting out / fear of missing out will happen. But also there'll be a lot of people who are like intentionally feeding that with just bad information, because they're going to basically say the opposite of what they think. They'll already act one way, like they'll sell all their Divines, then they'll say, Divines are crashing because they want them to crash and then they want to buy them back. So there'll be a bunch of stuff like that. But in terms of where I think we'll see Exalts go, I'm not quite as warm on them as Balor is. I don't think we'll see them at 1/3 of an Exalt, but I think they'll be more than Reddit thinks, because
1/3 of a Divine.
There's a bunch of constrained Exalts in the game that have been around for a while. Crykick Maw Beasts being the main ones. They're strictly worse than an Exalt. They can only be used to slam. They can only be used to slam influence items, and they require another specific beast that matches the influence, albeit a common red beast, and 2 yellow beasts. Those are 21C, all of 318. So once you factor in, the market has clearly decided slamming an influenced item is worth 30C, once you count your yellow beasts. Then you've got slamming jewels. I think we'll see Exalts probably stabilize for the first... At 4 weeks in, I think we'll see them in the 40 to 60 chaos range, but I do think they'll fall off after that. I think they might fall off real hard. Divines, though, I think
very good analysis.
Low 200s maybe.
Yeah. I like basing it off the Beast Slam. Like, there's still some assumptions made from there, but like that's a better starting point than I feel, which is what I have for my market estimations.
They're still reasonably close together. Like, before I heard all your answers, if I would have had to like just judge it based on my feeling, I would have said Exalts somewhere into the up to 50 chaos range, and I would have said for Divines 100 to 200 chaos. Now, of course, they could go higher, but
I'd like to make one request of just like the entire community. Whatever we decide prices of Divine Orbs are, could they be divisible by the space in my inventory? So like 100 or 150 or 200 or 300? Like, don't go into weird, like just don't go above 300 because I can buy 2 for a full inventory, right? Like, and then just meet in the areas that are divisible by inventory. It's just much better for my brain. I just prefer it.
Not 600. Can we make it 580? Because I hate having to remove my blasted scrolls from my inventory for that as well.
I don't mind that. That's fine.
570 if it's a Remnant of Corruption League.
I just want it divisible by my inventory slots. That's like if it's 330 per divine. If I want to buy 2 divines, I now have to do 2 trades. That's annoying. I don't want to do that. Just divisible by my inventory. That's all.
That would be great.
It's a reasonable request.
Let's see if you can get them to be 600 divided 7, whatever exactly that is. 85 and a bit.
No. I mean,
just so we get some awkward multiplication as well.
Right. Let's see. Is the helmet back? The helmet's back. All right. It's back on the Twitter. Level. Huh? They removed the level? Why? It's not eye level 95 anymore. But all the same.
I mean, it might.
It might be. We just don't know. Oh, God.
It's the same rolls, too. It's exactly the same helmet.
Exactly the same item. Yeah. Just
throwing. And the big thing is, they weren't pressing Alt on it in the first screenshot. So why did it even show the item level to begin with?
True, because we didn't see the other roll ranges.
Yeah.
Time to cue the X-Files music. Yeah, I mean, we already talked about the helmet. It's not much more to say. It's just curious what made them decide to remove the item level. Was it a mistake to release it? Was it an intended teaser? And they just walked back on it? Or I don't know.
I think they saw the community reaction. I think the community was talking more about the item level than was talking about the actual helmet.
Well, I mean...
Which was an impossible item level. But if it was 96, yeah, but 95 can be done.
Well, I'm pretty sure we'll hear about it. Other things that they posted on the Twitter include a number of quality of life buffs. Have you figured out what's your favorite one that you're looking forward to the most?
Yeah.
Which one? I hope they get it right. The one that they had said they needed to do more work on with the highlighting the most recently pinged message, like the most recent trade message you've had.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that one as well, but the highlighting was weak.
It's an unfinished that at all. That was revealed.
My trade Mac already did that. The thing's going to remember what Kirak mod I used on the map device. Yeah. That's my favorite. I'm going to press Fortune Favors the Brave about halfway through day 1 of the league, and then I'm just never going to press anything again. It's going to launch every map forever.
Or Heist in Tier 16 Atolls will be the other one.
Oh, not for me. But yeah, just remembering it is that's huge.
I would still go with the ultra wide screen buff. That you
ultra wide screen buff.
Yeah, that you don't need to develop horse eyes to see your HP and mana, because in the ultra-wide screen, these are in the very corners. So now they have this UI option where you see those globes more or less in the middle of the screen, like you see them on the regular monitor. And I think this is very exciting. I'm a big fan of ultra-wide screens. It makes coding and reading and doing a lot of split monitor tasks much easier. So I'm excited that PoE now embraces that, and you have all your buffs, all of your, hopefully the orbs be somewhere middle-ish in the screen. It's going to be great. It's going to be glorious.
You know, I've never been a friend of ultra-wide, but you endorsing the ultra-wide playstyle so wholeheartedly makes me actually consider, I might be wrong, maybe ultra-wide is the way
It's a cheat in PoE, literally. You see more off-screen, you can target further. It is, in PoE, you can actually consider it being an in-game advantage. There's games that actually forbid ultra-wide screen, like StarCraft, or I think most Blizzard games and most competitive games actually forbid ultra-wide screen, and they kind of make those black borders at the side because they provide an advantage. And the same is kind of true to PoE. You just see more things. And if you're doing any kind of code work, any kind of development, any kind of scientific text stuff, ultrawide is incredibly nice.
I would be playing in ultrawide if I wasn't making content. The only reason I don't play in ultrawide is because I really aesthetically hate the look of that giant black bar that you have to put on your stream and then fill stuff. And I hate it. I had a widescreen monitor. And then when I moved to a regular monitor, I played it in widescreen anyway by just not using the bottom of my screen for a while. And that big black bar on the stream was just an eyesore. I couldn't make it pretty. It didn't work. And I was just like, this doesn't look right. It doesn't look right. I have to just go to a regular thing. But if I wasn't making content, I'd be playing in widescreen all the time.
I've settled for making my viewers suffer. So there's this bottom bar where you just put some commands and information in chat and maybe the CatCam. So
but that's fair,
I
because
absolutely agree.
In PoE, I always worry, like, no matter where I put my camera or the chat or whichever element I have on the stream, I always cover some sort of area that's that's important to the viewers, right? They can't see my inventory, they can't see the in-game chat, they can't see the buffs, they can't see the area name and item level. And yeah, I think it's a very elegant solution to just play in widescreen and put all the UI elements outside of the game. Kind of like that.
I just sacrifice my mana bar. It usually doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, true. Fair enough. Well, I'll have to say I'm most hyped about being able to... Well, also the fact that it remembers the map mod that I selected last, but most importantly that I can track the progress to the Eater and the Searing Exarch on the map device now, instead of having to open my map. My atlas. That's so good, because now instantly when you open the map, you know, oh, this is the one where I'll get my my drop. For my
that came a couple of times for me this league with the Black Star conditionals requiring. I think I took 5 total attempts to do the Black Star conditionals, and I'd been mostly focused on the Eater side of things until quite late in the league. So that ended up being something that I had to farm a bunch of those. And I know on one occasion I'd dropped group for something, like I didn't realize I was on my 14th, and I dropped from a map before completing it, and that was like really annoying.
Yeah.
I
just remembered that I actually did some maps. Oh, this is embarrassing. I need to keep a straight voice, straight face when I say this, but I did some maps. I was playing Softcore Trade last league, and I actually did like some maps with Delirium, and I went into the boss room, killed the boss, the Screaming Invitation dropped, and I walked out of the boss room thinking that I'd pick up the invitation later and finish the Delirium, and then I left the map and opened the next map and never picked up the invitation. And it was like, what, 4x, 2x? I don't know.
I've done stuff like that before. It's fine.
I mean, it's not going to change. This change is not going to prevent me from doing it. But
thing is, if you see it drop and you know it's expensive and you're okay with the idea of picking it up later, if you lose it, wasn't a huge loss. You were already rich enough to not care.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
That's true.
If it was a huge loss to you, you would have been seen it drop and been and just instantly been over there and not cared about the delirium, right?
True. That's the only reasonable way to look at it.
Yeah. It's a very nice viewpoint. I constantly forgot about the searing Exile counter, and so I was just mapping and chaining maps, and every 20 maps or something, I was constantly surprised that, I dropped something expensive, it's that again. And maybe I should reduce it to a Divine Op sound or something, because it's somewhat of a predictable drop.
No, they're super valuable. They are super valuable.
They are.
You know, they're the best thing you will get drop in that map. Almost always the rare, like the 28th one.
All right, it's been talked to death really, but maybe there's some points that we want to quickly go over with the new Trickster. Is there any overrated or underrated passives that you'd like to highlight? And if you're going to play it at some point in the league, what skills do you see work with it well?
All right, I'm going to have a hot take. Heartstopper is tremendously underrated. Heartstopper is phenomenally good. And despite the fact that it's not always active, if you average the mitigation that it provides, so it's a 50% to be 40. It's 50% to be 40% damage mitigation at any given time. The average amount of it is equal to the champion fortify node that everyone takes for 4 points. Now it's worse than that because it's unreliable, but I think that it is going to be a tremendous amount of mitigation, and I think people will start shifting to it, especially for fights where you are taking dot and hit damage simultaneously, like Uber Elder. Against like Uber Elder, this thing is worth 1,000 hit points.
Yeah, people don't rate it particularly high because it's not consistently a stat that you can rely on, but you just phrased that it's not active all the time. It is active all the time. Like 50% of it is active all the time, right? Like at any given moment, you benefit from one half of the passive. And for me personally, like with timed buffs and stuff like that, I really like the time of need on Guardian. And I think that's underrated for the same reason. Because only like for 1 out of 2 seconds, 1 out of 5 seconds, you get that regen.
Yeah.
But how it ends up being is that if you take damage that doesn't warrant an instant flask and you're sitting at like 60% HP in an Azaro fight while leveling through the acts or something like that, right? Let me quickly bring it up so I can get the wording right. Time of need has every 4 seconds you regenerate 30% of life over 1 second. So 25% of the time you have a decent regen and 75% of the time you don't. But now what happens is that most or a lot of the times, or 50% of times when you take damage and the regen is not active, it will only take 1.5 seconds for the regen to kick in. So if you get hit and you're sitting at 60% and you're like, should I flask up or do I circle around the boss and wait to regen up? Then it's going to kick in relatively soon and it's going to top you off. And the same way with the damage reduction of Heartstopper, when we don't have the damage over time reduction active, but you need it, in 50% of times, it'll take less than 2.5 seconds until it's active.
So here's the problem. One of those is recovery. You've assumed you've survived the hit. You've got the defenses to survive the hit. Having recovery on a timer is fine. Heartstopper, I think, is worthless unless you're a righteous fire trickster, basically, because then it's always relevant. Because here's the thing. If you've got the right thing up randomly when you take that kind of damage, great. But here's the other option. You don't have the right thing up. You have the wrong thing up when you take the damage. If you don't die, you never needed it to begin with. And if you do die, it was worthless. Which means it does nothing. It is of no value at all. It's the most trash node I've ever seen. I hate it.
I can't agree. On hardcore, definitely. On hardcore, definitely. If you die, like you halve your amounts of time you die, it's terrible. But on softcore, think about that. Let's say you spend half the portals on a boss. So half of the times this saves your butt because you either get attacked by a Shaper bows or by a Shaper, beam, and half of the time it will save you because you play bad, and the other half of the time you die. Well, of course, you still die, so it's not consistent. So it's definitely worse than many other things. I absolutely agree, it's also great for Righteous Fire. I think overall it just gives me a bit of a meh impression, and this is more or less my core impression for the Trickster in general. It is good, and it is mathematically definitely good, and increasing your action speed by 8% is good, and being freeze immune is definitely good, but overall it feels like, unless, in this case, or in the case of Heartstopper, at least I know I can put it on Righteous Fire character, but I think it kind of feels to me that it's a little bit aimless. It's just a generalist class with decent nodes, and Heartstopper is decent, and you will save you some portals or make your life a little bit easier. But I don't like, if I'm playing, let's say, Lightning Conduit, which I will be, and I think, well, I need consistent shocks. Elementalist, boom, I know what I'm doing. Or if I'm playing, if I'm playing an Impale build, I know exactly, hey, can pair this with a champion. Or I'm playing a minion build, or maybe not now, but Necromancer is definitely a way to go. So you have these things that allow you to specialize and get a very strong, specific advantage. And I'm looking at tricks like, I kind of like this, but there's no flavor in that. It's just a fairly meh stat stick.
I have one more point. Not that I'm actively trying to change your mind, but also the reason I say Heartstopper is the most garbage node is because I'm not quite looking at it in a vacuum. I'm looking at it as that takes 2 ascendancy points.
And I only have 8.
And I only have 8?
Yeah.
And when I look around Trickster, every single thing, there's no build other than Righteous Fire that I would ever take it on. Which means at that point, it doesn't matter whether it's still acceptable on its own in a vacuum. It becomes trash by being surrounded by things that are better than it, and it just not being an option for anyone.
I don't think that I think it's often going to be your 4th choice. Depends on the exact stuff you've got. Polymath is the only one that you automatically take. And then there's the question is, do I go the Escape Artist for maximum buffer, or do I go for everything except Escape Artist?
Well, I think one step ahead is mandatory.
You're locked out of if you're playing a dot build, you don't gain anything from the Overleech node, so you're not going to take that. And then you've got the Suppression node, which is not worth 4 points. Escape Artist is sort of all right. But so that's one option you can go is if you're playing a hit-based build. If you're playing a dot-based build, then you ignore Escape Artist. You take everything else because Heartstopper is better defensively than Escape Artist is as a 2-pointer.
I would still not,
because we are no longer in an era of the game where you are mostly dying to one-shots. You are dying to multiple hits in a short period of time most of the time. There's an odd exception where you stuff up on a boss, but most of your deaths are to getting, killed in a quarter of a second by a bunch of different things. And often, in fact, most of the time, it's a combination of hits and dots. And that's why Heartstopper is better than people give it credit for.
I don't know. I'm really stuck on if it's got the wrong thing up and I don't die, then I never needed it. And it doesn't give me any help. And if I've got the wrong thing up and I do die, then I die 50% of the time. In which case, ill.
Which is
that might apply to you and to me and to 80% of players out there. But if I look at play on the highest tier, there's people often utilize, for example, focus, which has an uptime of 4 or 5 seconds as well, right? And you actually time your entire skill rotation in the way that the moment that your focus is up is the moment that you stand still, you stand in front of the boss, and you get that damage in. So if you're actually a mechanical god and you have a really good awareness of which phase of your character you're in with Heartstopper, you can time it so that the moment that the less damage from hit comes online, you're in that spot. You're standing still and you're getting that damage in for 5 seconds, and then for 5 seconds you lay low, you walk around. like for something like Cirrus would be perfect, because Cirrus has a lot of dot when you're moving around in the last phase, right? You have the ground dot, at least on Uber Cirrus, which is insane. And then like every once in a while you want to stand still and cast your abilities, and that's what you do exactly when you get that 5 seconds less damage from hits.
And there's a bunch of other things that you can do as well. Like you can be aware of what's going on, but people use left-click Molten Shell. If you want to talk about a defense that is unreliable, now I don't generally like this as an approach, but people sincerely do that because they think it makes them a lot stronger. Well, Heartstopper is that, but better.
Yeah, except that when I see people doing that, I tell them off and I make them stop, because I think that is also shit.
I mean, manually casting Molten Shell or casting damage taken, I think, are better. Yeah. But again, that's why the champion 4-point node is better than Heartstopper, but it's not an option on a build that can use Heartstopper. If you had the choice between taking both of them and they had the same opportunity cost, I'd take the champion node because it's better. But this is going to save a lot of deaths, a lot of deaths. 50% of the time when you're dying to one type of damage, it will save you. And when you're dying to a combination of types of damage, it will save you more than 50% of the time. And that's a lot of the time at current endgame, especially with, a lot of my deaths last league. Searing X stuck bad stuff on the ground during looping with Wrath of the Cosmos. And you're taking hits while you're standing in that. Well, Heartstopper prevents you. Eater of Worlds, trash mobs that shock you. And then, because that was early in the league that I was Eater, they shock you. And then they keep hitting you. Well, 50% of the time, it saves you from that. Uber Shaper, you're clipped by a beam and you're hit at the same time. Might save you. Not even necessarily 50% there, because the beam, even if you're on the wrong cycle and it's the beam that you're getting 40% mitigation from, and then you take a ball, maybe 40% less of the beam plus the ball is less than your life. I think, anyways, if I do go Trickster, I'm going to be, I'm going to start with that and just see how it feels in practice. But I'm impressed by it numerically for 2 points.
Yeah, I think it's definitely underrated, like in the general verdict. When I look at the entire Ascendancy, and after hearing what some people said about it, I'll have to say it does scream endgame to me. This is not something that I want to league start with. This is definitely like a reroll sort of thing, because specifically Polymath is super interesting. That getting the more damage based on how many different masteries you have. But how many masteries do you have pre-maps, right? Like, you really need that level 90 plus, level 95 to branch out and get all the masteries. Likewise, you have the strong energy shield synergy, which is also sort of an endgame thing. And overall, you have a lot of really good bonuses from the Ascendancy for your character, but nothing that's like a generic damage boost for you while leveling, like a generic power boost. Well, the one thing that comes closest would be Polymath, and I just mentioned that you don't have the masteries to back that up. This is not something I would pick in normal or cruel lab, because it will just not give you that much. Well, unless
I don't mind it for cruel, but that's the recovery.
Yeah,
if you've got 3 masteries, I'm fine with that node as cruel with 3 unique masteries.
Yeah. No, you're right. Well, I guess my point is that all of these things get better the later in the game it is, right?
You take one step ahead first, you take Polymath second, and then you respec later if you want something else.
Yeah, that's completely fair to say.
This is not the Raider for leveling.
The other Ascendancy changes were quite underwhelming. Has anyone found any redeeming qualities about them? Or is it just they're not game changers, right? Like the Pathfinder change is sort of weird. The Chieftain gets its damage doubled on the passive slam ability. And the Juggernaut has its one passive split into 2, which kind of, the 40% increased region is great, but
the Jug thing is a buff in general, but not massive. It certainly makes Brass Dome better at mitigating elemental damage than it already was. But the fact that it's now 4 points means that you're paying a real price if you want to go for, like, it's hard to fit in. The power is there, but it's and it was one of Jug's weaknesses was elemental hits.
Yeah, but that's not good either until very, very late. 8% of armor is like nothing. If you have like 10k armor, having 800 of that apply to elemental damage from hits, which are already mitigated by your resists.
Someone was showing me math earlier where it became pretty relevant around the 50 to 60k mark. Like if you get there, then it's a pretty good node. But if you're only at 10 or 20, then it's
And to be fair, you will get 50,000 with Brass Dome, with Brass Dome Determination, post nerf Defiance Banner, and a Granite Flask will get you to 50 on a Jug.
Yeah.
So basically, it's great when your Granite Flask is up. When your Granite Flask falls off, it's serviceable. And then if you get to the point of getting Mage Blood and Granite Flask, then it starts looking a lot better.
Yeah, fair assessment. Yeah, there's really not too much to say about the other changes. The Jug change is probably the one that lends itself to discussion most. The Pathfinder is just weird and confusing, and the Chieftain is like, yeah, sure, you doubled the slam damage for the power strength skill, but I honestly, I have yet to see anyone use that.
It says something about how bad the node was, that you doubled the power and it's still not exciting.
Well, there's just other really good exciting nodes in Chieftain. Like there's other things, Chieftain defining things, I would say, that I'd picked before this. And I mean, unless I specifically want to make a build around being a Chieftain slammer, I don't see that being used. Sadly. Okay, before we discuss our league starters, one quick point was flask charges on hit nerfs. So they took down the maximum that you can get flask charges on being hit. The prefix mod on flasks went down from 7 maximum to 3. Yeah. And that opens up a lot of space for other flask prefixes potentially, because now all of a sudden the flask gain on hit is maybe not the very best prefix to use in all situations.
I think it's still strong.
Yeah, I think 3 is still plenty, but it's going to be much harder to get 3 than... I mean, it's going to be as hard to get 3 now than as it was previously to get 7. So I'll still take 3, but will I take 1 or 2 over reduced charges used or increased flask duration?
I don't think so. You would only take 3.
I think I agree.
I think that's the whole point. If you take a look at what GEG is doing in the past years, months in this league, is they basically tell if there's something that you would always take and it's completely optionless, we don't want it in the game. Something like, hey, everyone took that 50% mana reservation node. Everyone was taking the flask charges until they could maybe Mage Blood or something. And everyone was running with the 2 silly apes with their minion build because charges were just such a bullshit level of damage when it comes to minions. And I'm not saying that the minion changes are all fine and stuff. I'm just saying that this is a power source that was so crazy strong that it basically outshined any other option for many, many builds. And I think what they've done is just say that, hey, you know what, we're not okay with you having this sort of incredibly potent single-use power source because it basically kills itemization altogether, making the game boring. It's exactly the aura stacker argument. When aura stackers were basically a thing in the Delirium League, at the end of the Delirium League, 70% of the PoE Ninja was using the exact same tree. Like, no difference. Exactly the same. Same tree, same juice, with some minor variations on what they could have, basically on what they could afford. But there was no variations at all. And that's the same thing with the flask charges. Everyone was running them. GG saw that and said, no, it's not fun. We want you to have some sort of thought and interesting ideas and maybe some different strategies involved in your decision process. So here, have this thing nerfed. which often leaves some sort of power vacuum and often means that there's something that the player misses. So they're usually better at finding the problems and finding ideal solutions. But to be fair, I think it's in the right direction. It was a little bit way too powerful, and you could sustain non-stop flask in so many situations. So I do understand that. I don't think that's intended to be played like that.
I did make like a 1x build that was a Pathfinder that just rolled 5 of those flasks and had auto use on full and 6% life gain. And you just go and stand in a 60% delirious tier 16, stand in the middle of it, go AFK, just watch your life just do this constantly. So like it was a little OP. It was a little OP. It'll be fine.
It'll still be fine with 3 charges when hit.
3, it'll still be usable. It just won't be like my default mandatory must-have on every build that isn't wearing a Mage Blood. Right.
But on that specific setup that you mentioned with the Pathfinder and the life gain,
it would probably still get used.
With 3.
Yeah. But that's fine. If you're like in a specific mechanic where you want a specific thing that synergizes with it, great. When it's the right choice for everyone all the time, bad.
Yeah, I think that's really the important takeaway for anyone listening is like, GGG is not trying to, take away your power just for no good reason. They're just trying to take away the obviously best option to open up that slot to make it an interesting decision once again to find out what you're putting there.
I'm always a fan of there's really, at least in my brain, only 2 solutions when something becomes so mandatory that everybody has it. And that's either you just roll it into base and accept and balance around everyone's going to have that, or you remove it, right? Because otherwise it's boring. If it's a non-option, you need to either just give it to everyone or just take away the option.
And the problem is also that sometimes it's not an obvious option either. And in that situation, you just widen the gap between the players that understand this option and how to get it, and the players that don't know it's even there. And then you find yourself in a situation where the players that know about this option are finding content trivial, but that content is just inaccessibly hard for someone that's not there. I think a good example of this would be, hypothetically, imagine that at the moment, if you're an endgame player, you find the Shaper pretty easy on a 6-link. Gem level's 20, 3 days into the league. But if you didn't know about Orbs of Fusing, and so you were stuck with 3 and 4 link items that dropped, then in that situation, the Shaper might feel pretty overwhelmingly high statted. And that's because, you've rolled that in. You've designed the encounter around the assumption that players will have a 5 or a 6 link when they're fighting him. He's balanced accordingly. His life is set based on that. But for players that didn't know, and this is obviously a ridiculous example because fuses are thrown down your throat, but if you didn't know that fuses were a thing and that you could link items, then you'd find the Shaper too hard.
I think that's a great example, but there's an even more acute thing that you can compare this, and it's even a double example because it's the blessing. I think the situation with the blessings is very interesting. In the past league, a very small percentage of the players were using blessings, but pretty much every single streamer, every single experienced racer, everyone in those groups was using a blessing because it was just so powerful to run an extra aura with increased effect. And the funny thing that happened is that this actually didn't change. So many builds will just be running Eldritch Battery now. And I think the only thing they managed to do is kind of killed off Petrified Blood for a bunch of builds because the blessing option is just so much more powerful. So, but yeah, I absolutely agree. If you don't know about this fact, you are in a disadvantage. And because it's the only viable road in the million roads you can take, you're actually in a double disadvantage because you even don't even know where to go to. So maybe if you have 5 viable roads and you encounter one of them randomly, so you roll your flask and you get reduced charges. Reduced charges doesn't sound so bad, but then only the knowledgeable player knows there's just one good mod there. So I think the example is quite good.
Somehow the example that you brought up, sirgog, reminded me of that New Player's Tale, where people think that, I think that's been brought up by many different people, but where people think that sockets and support gems and skill gems need to be in sockets adjacent to each other rather than just in the same link.
Yeah.
The game becomes a lot harder if you believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes people have during the early acts, but the early acts are tuned to be forgiving enough that, as long as you're slowly, methodically clearing, not trying to blitz through, you can get away with having major errors like that. And usually you pick it up about the time that you're in Act 6 and asking people, why is it taking me, 20 minutes to get through this zone and other players are blitzing it in 2. And then you realize, oh, I've got something fundamentally wrong. I've learned what that is.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all very insightful. Now, with all these things in mind, what build are you guys going to league start? Let's do a closing round where we quickly go over our league start plans. What league are you playing in, obviously, and what build are you going for first? And in a wider context, what are you trying to accomplish with that build? What Atlas passes are you going to do with that? What's the larger goal? And well, let's start with Balor, because I know Balor has a very well laid out plan.
The plan no one should be copying unless you already know what you're doing, but I will be starting as a Lightning Arrow Deadeye. This is a cast on death portal build. I don't have defenses. I also don't have life. I'll probably have like 2.8k life and no armor and no evasion and no suppression. Running tier 16 Delirious maps.
So I don't have to ask in which league you're going to be playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, softcore trade all of the time. This is I put out a video showing what I league started, but I made it very clear. This is just me showing you what I'm doing. You should not do this. You should absolutely not do this. Do not copy my league start and then complain to me about having a bad time. I promise you're going to have a bad time if you start what I'm starting. It basically requires you to... I'm doing it because I'm going to be in full MF gear, hopefully by day 2, with an Aurabot beside me. And so I know I can accomplish that, and I know I'll be able to make enough money to do it. And if you don't know that and don't have an Aurabot friend, you're going to have a bad time. So, yeah.
Or you can drop a few tiers. Like, that's the other thing people can do if they're in that situation. Drop tiers when you're by yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, I've already seen you play Lightning Arrow Deadeye last league, and I'm not sure, maybe the league before that, but then not at a starter. And yeah.
Same plan. I'm intimately familiar with it. I know exactly where its strengths and weaknesses lie. I know exactly what I will be able to do on my own. I know exactly when I need the Aurabot to be functional. I know everything I need to know about that build to be super comfortable with it. I actually don't even think it's the best league start for a Deadeye. I actually prefer the Venom Gaia build that I saw come out. Someone put out for Deadeye specifically. I can't remember who put it out now. But I don't know that build and I haven't practiced it. And there's a lot of benefit. There's a lot of benefit on being very intimately familiar with your league start build and knowing where all the power swacks are and what it is you will be able to do and won't be able to do. Huge benefit to that. And I would rather have that knowledge and benefit than pick something that I know is like objectively stronger, but I've never played it before and I have no idea what I'm doing. That will slow me down too much. That's not worth it. I think
that's the truest statement you've ever made on this podcast, dude. I couldn't agree more with you. It's so much more important to be intimately familiar with your build, your progression, and the capabilities of your build than having a raw, powerful build.
Yeah.
Especially, even more so in hardcore, I'd say. NeverSink, have you actually been able to make extensive league plans already, or is that going to be a last minute thing tomorrow when all the filterblade work?
A little bit, but I'm going basically for exactly the reverse of what the BalorMage is going for. For me, PoE is about the path, so I absolutely dislike playing the same build multiple times. So every league I deliberately intentionally start something I've never played before, and I absolutely love trying out new skills. And even if I sometimes fall into absolute traps, I don't really have usually economic plans, so sometimes I go for, hey, I want to farm up a mirror faster, a mage blade faster, or something like that. But I really usually want to try out the new content and the new bosses, and I actually didn't do that last league. So in the Exile league, I reached 40-40, and I had basically explored all of content, but I felt like the last league was a little bit boring. There were no skills, there were no new mobs in the Sentinel League overall. It was just basically a juiced up league with some number increased bosses with a few small new mechanics, so I got bored of it very quickly. So I'm really excited to try out the Lightning Conduit build. It feels like it's really mechanically new. I've seen some interesting takes on it by Psy, Zizaran, DS Lily, and I'll probably stick with the modified tree of the DS Lily build and probably will go with the Annihilating Light or something similar and just go and try to enjoy a new build and see how I can optimize it. I really like this unexplored area. I feel like when there's nothing to explore and when basically the best options are already laid out, it just feels like I'm beelining towards a goal and the whole creativity and thought and exploration is taken away. And this is something that because I don't really care much about kind of stacking up currency and making currency guides, this is just not something I'm very interested in. So I'm really excited to try out Lightning Conduit because it's something entirely new when it comes to builds and how it plays.
Yeah, and it's also seems to be reasonably powerful. I've seen a lot of conversation about it, and even after it got adjusted, it still seems very promising.
I think it'll be good. I've run some numbers and actually spent some time POBing the last days because it was so exciting for it. I think it will be quite good. I think there's a lot of things people might not expect. I actually made a small video on it. People might not expect where it runs short because you really depend on the shock scaling and you really don't want. I see a lot of people playing around this lightning arrow conduit vortexic idea, and I think it's a big trap because lightning conduit has a 0.5 cast time. You'll be like alternating between two skills, and you probably go mad. And getting a mirage archer to fire faster than lightning than the conduit is going to be really, really tough. It's like a double the speed gap, and it's kind of this cast on crit problem there. But I think it has a lot of opportunity. It's a very exciting skill with an interesting form, and it's just something new. So exciting, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more about the excitement. Before I talk about my very, very carved out league starter plans, let's give sirgog a chance to tell us what's going on.
Well, firstly, just speaking of shock stuff, I made a calculator for how much shocks hit for that I just shared around the Discord chat. I don't know if anyone wants. Like, I got it hosted as well. But I think one of the things a lot of people are missing with that is that it is a lot harder to inflict big shocks on certain endgame bosses. For example, the Uber Cortex is the highest effective ailment threshold boss in the game. Its effective ailment threshold, after you factor in the damage reduction, is 30 million. And you are going to require a lot of investment to shock that thing for more than about 40%. But a lot of the other bosses, like once you get past normal Maven, you start looking at 10 million plus ailment thresholds, and those are going to be really, really hard to land on. So just be aware of that. And it'll be quite different in contexts where you've got a trash monster that you can hit in the same encounter. But that should hopefully be some use in terms of just getting a sense as to how much you're going to be shocking for. In terms of my own plans, I have currently 20.5 hours to finalize something. I've got a fairly safe plan that I had in mind as a potential backup if nothing else jumps at me, was always going to be some sort of chaos dot skill. Now, Bane Occultist is very safe, but I was trying to force Soul Rend into it, and I haven't yet managed to solve it. Soul Rend is getting a 2 gem level buff, and I've got Soul Rend in a position where I think it's like almost good enough that'd be okay to go with that, but it's at the expense of being quite squishy. So that's one thing I've got as a possibility. I may go the Soul Rend Occultist. I may go with some sort of trickster build that I haven't yet decided. And if I do go the trickster build, I may league start as Explosive Trap Saboteur and then transition at some point, because Explosive Traps have been like a little bit worse than Seismic for a long time. And now that Seismic's been taken out the back, shot, and then its corpse has been dug up and shot again, Explosive Trap is looking like it's the best trapper. The problem with it is the graphics look hideous. And that's coming from someone that plays with screen shake on for the laughs. So, yeah. That's where I'm thinking at the moment. If I don't have any flash of inspiration, day one I'll be a saboteur explosive trapper with a view to a day 3 or 4 respec into some zany trickster thing. I don't know exactly what. I was going to go with the new shock skills on a trickster, but then the changes that were announced yesterday widened the gap between elementalist and other ascendancies on it. Like they made elementalist. They hit non-elementalist builds worse than they hit elementalist ones, and so I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to try that on anything other than either a ranger that has the fury of nature nodes, which you can't afford on day one, they don't exist day one, or an elementalist. So, short is I haven't decided.
Yeah, similar here. I mean, that all sounds very good, and you're already actually kind of influencing me, affecting me, thinking, oh, maybe that sounds interesting. But what I was thinking originally was I really want to do fast leveling on day 1 again, and I'm fairly familiar with the armor brand cremation on either Witch or Templar. I also really still want to get a video out about that, because that's been one of the best leveling strats, certainly like in the absolute top for Templar and Witch for the past year or two, and it really needs to be adjusted. So last time when I made my video about speed leveling Orb of Storms and Wave of Conviction in 2019, that got nerfed shortly after, and Armor Brand Cremation emerged shortly after. So maybe if I make a video about Armor Brand Cremation this league, then hopefully it will get nerfed. If it gets enough views, hopefully it will get nerfed next league. So there's going to be a new leveling meta to figure out. No, but like Armor Brand Cremation, really great. I did it in Gauntlet. I did it on any sort of league start where I could fit it in. And this time I was thinking to get to maps on Armor Brand Cremation and then transition into Absolution Guardian. Even though Absolution is kind of decent for leveling by itself, but I honestly feel like if you don't get a Val summon skeletons early, leveling as a summoner is just more of a struggle and more. I mean, it might be different with the new gearing, but if you take into consideration the actual intention behind the changes, that they get less power from Ascendancy and from gems and have to invest into gear, it actually probably makes it more painful to level as a summoner. And that's even more reason for me to just level as a spellcaster with my flat damage to spell vendor craft. And then probably Absolution Guardian, because I felt the build was almost unkillable when I played it in Gauntlet, and even with the it being unclear how we're gonna scale the offenses of the build with the new items, I think the defensive capabilities are really good. Even if I lose access to spell suppression, obviously, but I can go get a meaningful amount of block and get some max resists. I think that's gonna be great. Alternatively, I'm looking to go for either some Vortex Elementalist or the Ice Trap Inquisitor. But
cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the Sunblast, how it's going to feel with having to wait until the end of the trap duration for them to trigger. And there's too many uncertainties. I'll probably just go with Absolution Guardian because, like Balor said, it's all important to know what you're getting yourself into and where the power peaks are of the build and what you need to get going. So probably gonna go with that for the first couple days. I'm starting in hardcore trade this time around. I really wanted to do another softcore trade league, but I'm already going to play a lot of softcore for Gauntlet practice, right? I mean, it's pseudo-hardcore, but it's always a softcore private league that you do Gauntlet practice in, and I kind of want to start Gauntlet practice really early this time around, so like 3 weeks in. And then I was like, I don't want to do SSFHC to start. I don't want to SSF softcore, and I've done softcore trade last week. I'm going hardcore trade because also I heard Zizaran is going hardcore trade. Ziggy D is actually playing hardcore for the first time in ages and also going for hardcore trade. And I hope that, like, you know, there's a snowball effect of big creators making small creators go hardcore trade, because there's people in hardcore trade and then viewers going into hardcore trade, so that we can have one big group found league in hardcore trade. That would be amazing.
If those people stay there multiple leagues in a row, I believe that'll happen. This one league, I don't think that knock-on effect will happen very much. But like, if they all enjoy it and they're all like, yeah, we're going to keep going hardcore trade, and they do it again and again and again, like that'll bring a lot of people back to hardcore trade for sure.
It would definitely be nice, because in the past league I had a 2 or 3 day hardcore filter generation outage, because for a special algorithm I needed the soft breachstone, and there was none listed for 3 days, and I had to bug fix that specifically for hardcore, because you people have not enough of those basic breachstones and stuff. So there's still
no, it's just hardcore trade things. All right. Well, that about sums it up. Is there any closing remarks that you guys would like to bring up before we say our farewells and good lucks to the new league?
Oh, I'm good.
Trying to think if there's anything. Nothing really jumps out other than that it'll be interesting to just try and discover all sort of weird stuff. It's the discovery phase is why I'm going softcore.
Yeah.
I think as a content creator that's mostly on YouTube, it's like the discovery phase is an important period, like to find that stuff. And if you're in hardcore and you just wind up having a 6 hour setback or a 12-hour setback, that's
yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see all the great revelations. But yeah, if there's no closing remarks other than what we already said, then there's nothing left for me to say than thank you for coming on, for making time on this very busy league start hype cycle to talk about all these lovely topics so close to the actual league start. If you've missed the podcast in the beginning, wow, I'm blanking. Guys, viewers, listeners, if you enjoyed the podcast, make sure to check it out in full. If you've missed the beginning on all the podcast platforms, it will be uploaded on YouTube and stuff. There's bonus content like the pre-podcast and post-podcast discussions on my Patreon if you want to support the creation of the podcast. And definitely go and support the content creators who make time to appear here. In this case, go follow NeverSink, follow sirgog, follow BalorMage, and support them on their journey in 3.19. And we're going to have another podcast where we talk about all the revelations of the league start weekend on Monday at the same time as today. That's Monday, 22nd of August, 9 p.m. GMT. And we're going to be joined by Big Ducks and Shack Central, two very pop creators who are hopefully going to have some insightful commentary about the new league. And until then, I wish you a wonderful league start. Make sure to not pick any bait builds. And make sure to not log out in the first hour or two to land back in the queue. Make sure to deactivate your logout macros and get a good item filter from filterblade.xyz, courtesy of NeverSink. All right, guys. Thanks, and have a wonderful league start. Bye-bye.
Thank you for the invitation. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.